Welcome to our Montecito Sanitary District General Meeting, March 11th at 1:35. So while the MSD board is in session, all board members must preserve order, decency, and decorum at all times and be respectful while others are speaking. So let's go ahead and do roll call, Betsy.
Yes, Board President Johnson,
Present.
Director Barrett,
Here.
Director
Can you hear me?
Newquist. Yes, we heard you, Director Johnson. Director Newquist,
Here.
Director Eversole,
Here.
and Director Fuller. Gary, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself for the roll call, please.
Sorry, present.
Thank you. Director Johnson, I think now your audio is going in and out. We had a difficulty hearing you just now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Betsy. Oh, gosh. Technology.
Yeah.
So welcome to, we did the roll call. So we're going to go into, before we get into public comment, I just want to make a quick announcement, just because there's been a lot of interest I will be calling a special meeting on March 25th at 2 p.m. on 2 topics. And these are the topics of the recycle wastewater and the 30% study, of the discussion and recommendations, and also the discussion of consolidation of the 2 districts if our district is interested in pursuing a study. So those are the 2 topics, and that would be for March 25th, Thursday at 2 p.m. Okay. So that being said, we're going to go ahead to public comment. Is there anyone that's not on our agenda who would like to make public comment?
Members of the public, you may address the board by using the raise hand feature in Zoom or by unmuting yourself now. President Johnson, I see no hands raised.
Going to the consent calendar, which is approval of minutes. And there's 2 sets of minutes. So we have the minutes of February 11th. Okay, we have the two approval minutes of February 11th and the special meeting on February 12th. Was there any discussion? Okay, I heard a motion, I believe. Dawn Eversole, did you? Okay.
Board President Johnson, do we want to ask, since the consent calendar is generally accepted with 1 motion, do we want to ask if there are any questions on the payables before there's a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I could hardly hear you on that one. Go ahead.
I said, since the consent calendar is approved by 1 motion for both minutes and payables, do we want to ask if there are any questions on the payables before we take a motion?
Correct. That's why I asked for discussion or questions. There any questions or discussion on any of the consent calendar?
I have a question, and maybe this should go to Mark. Since I see these as 2 different items, especially with the payables, usually having several questions, why shouldn't there be 2 sets of motions on the consent calendar?
So that's, you can do that if you'd like. Generally, when you have a consent calendar, and candidly, it's a little silly to have a consent calendar when you only have 2 items. A consent
Correct.
calendar is better for an agency that has a number of standard items that are non-controversial, adopting of minutes, payables, and other things. Here you only have 2 items. If one of the directors has a question or has a reason to want to have one of the items removed from the consent calendar, prior to adoption of the motion, they should request that item B, for example, be removed from the consent calendar So that will be taken separately. You do that if you want to vote no on a particular item, but you support the rest of the items, for example. So it's perfectly fine to take them together, or you can take them independently. Hope that addressed your question.
Well, I would like to take them separately.
Okay.
So I think Director
Okay.
Eversole made a
So
motion.
we have a. Okay, I've lost all audio.
So can you hear me? So I think the approach now would be to have to, take a separate motion on 3A. And then after that's completed, take a separate motion on 3B. So I would start there, President
Excuse me,
Johnson.
I gotta fix the audio, so I
Okay.
need to.
So are we to call for a motion on the approval of minutes?
Yeah, I've so moved.
Correct. I'll second.
And then I think we're waiting on Director Johnson to get her technical difficulties.
Somehow I'm getting a bad connection.
We can hear
Sorry.
you.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, so we'll go ahead. If there's any other comments, if not, Betsy, go ahead and do roll call.
To clarify, I believe that this motion is
Approval.
only for the approval of minutes and that we're going to take a second motion for payables, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the motion
Yes.
made by Director Eversole, second by Director Newquist. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Barrett,
Aye.
Director Eversole,
Aye.
Director Fuller. Director Fuller, you're muted currently.
All right, approve.
Thank you. And Director Johnson. Your vote, Director Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I don't think I was called.
Aye.
And
Can you
Director
hear me?
Newquist.
Said I.
Sorry, we're having a lot of audio issues today. Director Newquist, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, motion
So
passes.
now we're gonna make,
Sets of minutes.
the audio, because I could only hear half of that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the approval of the payables. So was there any discussion or questions?
May I ask if Betsy could show the payables on the screen?
Yes, certainly. So here's the summary page. Would you like me to navigate to a specific page?
No, I'd just like to review them real quickly.
Okay, let me know if you'd like me to navigate forward, please.
Can you explain Iron Horse Auto Body, 15,000?
Can I ask Alex, Operations Manager, or Rico to discuss?
I can explain that. That was the repair for the damage for the break-in that we had, and they broke into all our bends. We took it to the repair shop. Insurance, I believe, paid for majority of that. So we did, I think, have a deductible of, I want to say $2,000. Betsy, is that right?
And we've also, yes, we had a deductible of $2,000. And we also, I believe, already received reimbursement from our insurance company for that claim.
It's interesting how this was listed, though. Repair damages to F-350 truck, but that's not really what had happened, I don't believe.
Well, it was the damages to the tool bin doors, not an accident or anything like that. If that is kind of what you read, is kind of what we can read into that.
Okay.
So again,
That's it.
those were just for the doors, painting and doing some other work that they had to do.
Okay, thank you. Can
I
you
had-
scroll down, Betsy, on the payables?
Yes, so the next page.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome. We have 4 pages today, so
On this page right here, Betsy, we have Dudek. It's at 335 for 2,511. It says it's planning and permitting services for the CDP in October. Did they just now get us that invoice or?
I believe so.
Yes, that is correct.
Do we know if we're gonna get any more invoices from Dudek or what's the other company involved in that permitting process?
It was Dudek, Stantec, and Cornell. And no, the project stopped basically in October. And this was a particular invoice from Dudek that they didn't send to us, and we received a late notice recently, and we never had received the first notice.
So this is gonna be the last from those 3 entities for the time being?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, well, when you get to the next page, I got a quick question.
Is everyone ready for me to move forward?
Yeah, I'm on a different computer and I cannot get this video working. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we
Uh,
can't see you. There's a
yeah,
I'm
Okay.
having, I'm having audio problems here.
I'm the mystery guy. Right there, $114,000. How many manhole covers was that?
That was approximately like 111, I think. This was part of the Santa Barbara County's large repaving project that Granite undertook.
And along those same lines, when are those manholes going to be raised on Jamison Lane between San Ysidro and Sheffield?
That might be a question for Alex. I'm
So
not sure.
I know that there's work that's going to be done there with the freeway crossing and everything. I think Rico can probably start looking at getting prices for that. And then once we get those prices, we can give you a date.
Okay. Yeah, I asked about this a month ago. I mean, it's been like that for at least 2.5 months now.
We can get you a date for sure on the next board meeting.
Okay, I just have neighbors asking me.
Well,
And I'm going like, okay. Yeah, it's not so bad if you've got a,
Director Barrett,
yes.
so Director Barrett, did you want to pull that item off the approval of payments and then hear that? Because that's being brought back to the next meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, as I understand it, that 114,000 was for 111 manholes is what Ms. Poitras just told us. So that work's been done. I was wondering when the work on Jamison Lane between San Ysidro and Sheffield was going to commence to raise those manhole covers as well. And then Alex said that Rico would give us an update on that.
What do you?
Ms. Poitras, where were those 111 manhole covers?
Sorry, I actually looked up the correct number. It's actually 94.
Okay.
They were spread out throughout the district. So there was
Oh,
quite a
okay.
few up Hot Springs, up on it's like I'm seeing like the whole picture of the district. There was a lot of work that they did. So there was a lot of various intersections and work on East Mountain Drive and Park Lane, and there was a whole map that we had to go through, and we had Rico actually look at the map that they gave us and count all of the manholes to make sure that the invoice was correct that they sent us. So we had to work with them to adjust their invoice to make sure it matched with the correct number and areas that they actually lowered and raised as part of that project.
We contract that out, right? To
We
Public
do,
Works?
and because the district has to pay, and then basically, we had Granite do that for us and they just invoiced us separately from the project.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It makes it a little easier that we don't have a separate contractor in the middle of Granite's work or, whatever county contractor that they're using.
Right. No, I watched them do the work. I'm surprised it's only $1,000 each or a little over. That's just quite a bit of work.
Yeah, it depends, each different road, some of them they had to lower and raise, some of them they just had to raise. So we got bid prices right when the county went out to bid, so we were aware generally of the cost. And then they made some small modifications during the actual work that extended it a little bit.
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Betsy, is there one more page of payables?
This is the final page. Right.
Okay.
The
I
sec-
would like to move to accept payables.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Shall I take a vote?
Excuse me, Betsy, I'm having a real problem with my audio, so I'm not hearing a lot of this. I'm gonna go ahead let's go ahead. Buddy, can you hear everything?
I can hear everything fine. Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, can you hear me at all?
Director Johnson, your audio goes in
Okay.
and out. If
So
you
I'm
want
gonna,
to, you could either log out and reconnect, or you could
we've
connect
had
to
this problem
audio
before.
via your phone. You could use the call-in
Okay, can
number.
someone take over the meeting, please?
Okay.
Okay, someone take over the meeting until I get this fixed, okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and, sorry.
No problem. Okay. So that handles, I tell you what, in the future, Betsy, if you would, just make this consent calendar go away and just do approval of minutes, approval of tables, that sort of thing like we just did, please.
Will do.
Yeah.
We'll just have two separate agenda items instead of the consent calendar all in one. Not a problem.
Wonderful. Okay. And then we go to old business, which is none, number 4.
Director Barrett, would you like me to take a vote
Oh, I'm sorry.
to accept the payables? Do we need any to ask for public comment prior to that?
It's not on the agenda.
But you need to ask for it, yes.
Okay, we need to put that on our agenda, Betsy, if you would, please, in the
But
future.
Director Barrett, it doesn't need to be on the agenda. That's just a procedural requirement of the Brown Act. So you
Okay.
wouldn't put on the agenda that, request for public comment. It's just a part of the process.
So is the process, once we've made a motion, it's been seconded to open it up to the public and then vote on it?
At some point in time, before you take a vote on it, you should ask if there was any public comment.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I now open this up to public for any public comment. Betsy, would you tell me if anybody's hands raised?
All right, I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so now if you would take a roll call on this, please.
Thank you. Director Barrett,
Aye.
Director Eversole,
Aye.
Director Fuller,
Aye.
Director Newquist,
Aye.
and Director Johnson, if she can hear us. I think she's disconnected at the moment.
It's fine. You can just mark her absent on that vote. It's not.
I'll mark her absent for that vote.
Okay, does that conclude number 3?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Director Barrett.
Yahoo. Okay. Number 4, old business. I see none. So now we go to number 5, new business. And A is public hearing on adoption of ordinance number 17, director compensation. It is recommended that the board conduct a public hearing and consider the adoption of ordinance number 17, establishing the compensation of directors and repealing ordinance 15. Okay, it's open for discussion.
So maybe I can offer some help on this.
Okay.
So I think the way we should proceed is there in your board package, there's an ordinance that purports or proposes to increase the district compensation paid to directors at each meetings. The only change between this ordinance and your current ordinance is a slight increase per meeting. And that's reflected in the ordinance. If there are any questions about the ordinance, I'd be happy to answer those, or staff would as well. And if there aren't any, what I would suggest we do is open the public hearing, see if there's any public comment on it. And if there are, take those public comment. And if there aren't, then at the conclusion of the public comments, close the public hearing, and then we can get to the business of adopting the ordinance.
I think for clarification, it was $200 per day for the board members. And now it's at 220. Is that correct, Mr. Mannion?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I don't know what the previous prices were on number 2 and 3 in this ordinance, but now it's $137.50.
The percentage stayed the same. That is 2/3 the cost of the full day is what.
Got you. Okay, that's how it's calculated. All right. So at this time, should I open it up to public for public comment?
Sure.
Okay. Betsy, would you open it up to public, see if anyone wants to discuss it?
Yes, members of the public attending, if you wish to make public comment on ordinance number 17, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. You may at that time, when you're called on, unmute your audio and use video if you so wish. Director Barrett, I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay. So do we need to vote on this, Mr. Mannion?
So now what I would suggest you do is you close the public hearing.
Okay.
And now you go through the typical process where you take a motion on approval of ordinance number 17 in a second, and then go through the.
I so move to ordinance 17.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been motioned and seconded. At this point, we'll go to a roll call vote, please. Betsy?
Director Barrett,
Aye.
Director Eversole,
Aye.
Director Fuller,
Aye.
Director Newquist,
Aye.
Director Johnson. I'll mark as absent for this vote. I think she's still having connectivity issues.
Okay. So that concludes 5A. We now move to 5B. Sewer main extension deferral policies. It is recommended that the board consider hearing requested information from District Council, Mr. Mark Mannion, on the topics of I, interest rate charged by the district, and II, recording against a property related to sewer main extension deferral policies, and finally III, taking such additional related action that may be desirable. So we'll start with I, the interest rate charged by the district.
Thank you, Director Barrett. So this actually builds on a memo I did back in the early 2000s when I was the general counsel for the district, when the district actually initiated this policy. And and maybe to preface my comments a little bit, the district has the ability in its enabling act to compel people located within the jurisdiction of the district to connect to the sewer system. So you have the ability to compel it. Previous boards have decided not to use that authority. And what previous boards did in the past instead is come up with this policy that I think you're probably all aware of, of extending sewer mains in portions of the district when there's enough interest expressed by the neighborhood. And I think that policy is 2/3 or something along those numbers. And it's not a hard and fast policy. There's been some deviation from that. That's kind of the general policy. And then the question at the time was, well, what do we do? First of all, how do we pay for the extension when only 2/3 of the people that are going to benefit by that extension are participating in it? There's a gap. And what the previous board decided was that, one, they wanted to encourage the extensions. So they decided to use funds that they had in reserves and essentially loan those funds to that project. Okay, and that's how they bridged the gap, the funding gap between the people who were participating and the cost of the overall project. The issue that was raised was, well, can we do that for no interest so that we don't overburden people? Or do we have to charge some interest rate? And the conclusion of my research, which I confirm now, is that the district could not do it at a 0% interest rate. That would arguably be a gift of public funds. And the rationale is these funds are sitting in an account earning some amount of interest. Admittedly, it's not very much. It was more back then, and it's even less now, but it's in the local agency investment fund. And so what we told the board back when this policy was initiated, that you at a minimum had to impose that interest rate, so that for all intent and purpose, that the district was made whole. That if those funds weren't being used to pay for the construction of this sewer extension, it would be sitting in this LAIF fund, earning interest rate at, it's frankly less than 1%. And so that's what the decision was made, and that's why the policy reflects that. So they impose whatever the rate is that the district would have earned under the LAIF. What wasn't addressed back then, and what was requested at the last meeting by Director Eversole, was, can we impose a higher rate on those funds? And the answer is yes. There's no limitation other than California usury laws on the interest rate that you can charge. So if the district wanted to impose a 5.5% interest rate on those funds, and that amount would accrue until the person decided to connect, you can do that. That wouldn't violate the law, and it would be appropriate. It would be fine. The policy decision is something that this board needs to consider: is, does that create an additional barrier into the entry of having people connect up to the sewer system? That's for you to decide. That's the, there's no legal issue. You can do it if you guys want to, if the board wants to, but that was just a policy consideration. Again, the board back then came to the conclusion that they wanted to impose as little interest as possible, and this board may make a different decision going forward. So the answer is, if you'd like to, you can impose a greater interest rate than what you currently impose, and that would be acceptable, subject to the board authorizing that.
And Mark, what is the interest rate currently at?
It's really low. I believe it's less than 1%, but maybe Betsy would have that number.
It's the same rate that we get on LAIF, I believe.
Yeah, which is really
Okay.
low.
They're very similar. The one moment, I actually saved it this morning. I can show you the I believe the resolution that we've used recently actually utilizes the county interest apportionment on our county funds in the treasury, and that is just 1 second. I'll do a new share here. Ending December 31st, the interest rate was 0.466% on our county funds, and that's what we've been used to. But as you can see, that's extremely close to the LAIF. The recent LAIF rates are also hovering around 0.4%.
Just for everyone's sake, I would think, and for making this easy, and also enticing those who have not connected to connect in the future, and making it easy on the board, why don't we consider a 1% interest rate?
Well, there are lots of things to consider, and the previous boards, I'm sure, had their reasoning for what they did. I think of course, everything, just like this chart we see right now, everything's recorded. It can be kept up with through the years. But you may have some of these people on septic that just repaired their system and spent $20,000, just pick a number. They have no incentive to hook up to sewer, which I totally understand if they just repaired it. So I'm just taking it a ballpark, say 55,000 for a connection with these people. And I just ran a number at 5%, that increases it about $2,750 for the first year. And then of course that's compounded the next year. Someone on fixed income, someone that just remodeled their house, someone who just replaced their sewer line, it's a pretty big expense to hook up to the sewer main extension. Of course, half of 1% like Director Eversol said in our previous meeting, is not much of an incentive to hook up if they have the capability and the monetary wherewithal. So it's a tough decision. Along those same lines, if we had a $55,000 allocation, if you did 3%, you're looking at $1,650 per year, about $150 a month, somewhere in there. But that's totally whatever the board would like to do, and we'd like to hear everybody's comments on it. Any other ideas?
Yeah, I don't think it should be punitive, but it should reflect, I mean, you know, you could say 2% and the, well, the lesser of 2% or the greater of 2% or the prime rate, you know, whichever is greater.
Does that sometimes get pretty confusing, though?
Well,
No.
what we have to be careful of is, say we go into an inflationary period 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and the interest rates skyrocket. Hopefully not as bad as President Carter days, but we have to at least get back what we're generating.
Correct.
We fix it at
No, I agree.
2%, 3%, and the rates go to 8%, we're losing money, we're going backwards. So I think that's why so I think,
No, I indicated, you know, at 2% of the prime rate, whichever is greater.
so we want to tie it to prime rate. Is it, Betsy,
Well,
how do they determine this rate that we get with the county? How is that determined?
This report is generated by the county treasurer tax collector's office. We receive it from Harry Hagan's office on a quarterly basis. So I believe that the county treasury is also invested, whether it be with LAIF or PMIA. And that's why they're quite similar.
Okay.
But this is the return we're getting on our funds in the county treasury. So that report is directly issued by them.
Does this change monthly or annually?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay.
Yes, so you can see over this document, I mean, this goes all the way back to 1978.
Okay.
But it's reported to us quarterly.
So for example, if someone defers next week on a connection, and that connection fee is 55,000 to pick a number out of the air, and they don't connect for 5 years, you got to keep up with this quarterly, put together some type of spreadsheet if they do connect in the future. Is that right?
And yes, that's right. But we average, I believe only, and I can double check in a minute. We average this interest rate over a set period of time. And I believe it's 1 year, but I can check really quickly.
Okay.
And at the time of connection, we use the 1 year average of this return rate to determine the interest rate charged at the time of connection.
So you keep the same rate for 5 years?
We charge only one interest rate over the period of the non-connection for at the time that they connect. Yes. So we take the most recent. So for example, what we would do right now, if someone called us and said, I'm one of the 85 properties who have deferred my sewer connection, and say they had deferred for 3 years, we would still average the most recent 4 quarterly return rates listed here. And I can zoom in to let you know, right? We would average these most 4 recent quarters and charge that one interest rate for the entire deferral period.
So it would be the combination of those rates?
Yes, an average of the last year. And we send,
The average of the last year or the last 3 years?
the last year, 1 year. So for example, if someone were to connect right now, it would incentivize them over connecting, say, at the end of September of 2019, when it was almost 2% for the previous 3 quarters, right? And we send letters to property owners annually to let them know what the cost would be at the time. Saying you've deferred, here's the current, what the charges would be if you were to connect now in this quarter.
See, the flaw in that system is if you go to the previous column, it's as high as 6% over there.
Right?
Yeah.
Interest rates fluctuate.
And so the district, if it had not spent the funds, would be earning 6% on the money. And then they come in at 0.5%, and you just do the last 1 year. We've gone backwards on the deal, the district has.
No question.
That's going to go in the reverse when the interest rates go up. So it's not really a flaw, is it?
Well, you go back to 13, you can see it's down to 0.3%.
But interest rates will be going up soon.
And then you look right across there, it's 5.7% or 5.8%. It just depends on when how long they defer.
Yeah,
Really.
no question.
Yeah. And over, at the higher rate, cut it in half, 10 or 12 years, the district, if they tied in now, would probably leave what, 12 to 15,000 on the table that they could have earned off interest had we
Sure.
not expended the funds.
Yep.
Interest rates are down now. So I think it's a high incentive for people to log in and to tie in currently, right? So we're looking to incentivize people to do it now. We tell them interest rates are going up in the future. Get on it now where you can. I think that's a perfect incentive. We're not skewing anything. We're not doing anything out of the ordinary. We're just saying, these are the interests. It's going up, so get in while you can.
Yeah, I always wondered how they calculated that. They only go back 1 year, and whatever that rate is, it is, because it would be very difficult to put together a spreadsheet to look at this thing quarterly over a 5 or 6 year period. I mean, it could be done.
I don't think it would be. I mean, that's mathematical.
Yeah, it's just a spreadsheet. I mean, we could change policy to where from whatever work date that the work, was completed, and they could hook up to keep up with the rate on an annual basis or whatever. I mean, that's another way to look at it. Instead of just doing the last 4 quarters average.
Yeah, I agree.
That would give you a real number of what the district should have earned if it had the money
Sure.
working, earning this interest rate. What does everybody think about something like that?
I think that's fair.
I'd go along with that.
Would we need to give them on an annual basis say the connection fee, again, I'm picking this out of the air, is 55,000. Well, we need to keep up with annually and tell them now it's 56,300 and the next year, blah, 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 and just keep sending them a letter, or what?
Absolutely.
I think that's a great idea. We might, if we keep it the way it is now, and we're just giving them the average of the last year with a very low interest rate right now, we can put out a letter that would be a strong incentive for them to jump on it now, say, look, we're going to change our policy. Rates are going up. You're going to be paying more. So jump on now. I think we're creating a strong incentive.
I concur.
Well, I guess the question is, do we want to use the last 4 quarters as an average, or go back in time to the true interest rate from when the construction ended? How many do we have that have deferred total right now, do you think, Betsy?
I believe that was reported at our last finance meeting is 85.
So we already have some that go back in time. And Gary, your idea is correct on anything going forward if we do the construction now.
Yeah. Well, we could reach out to those 85 people and say, look, interest rates are low. We're changing our policy. And you know, it's going to accrue at the level. So if you sign on now, I think we might get a rash of people saying, "Ooh, yeah, I'm getting a deal right now. Let me get on here." Or we just go ahead and charge them the regular money and wait. But I thought you really wanted to create an incentive for them. And I think letting them know it's going to cost more because the policy's changing. I think that's a, you know, and if they wait, then they pay more.
We could leave the policy as it is now and revisit this in 6 months to see if anybody, you know, did connect.
Yeah.
If the incentive worked.
Well, we should go ahead and let them know that it's going to cost you more. Create that incentive for them. If that, I think that sounds good to me. You're gonna pay more later. We're changing our policy. The rates are gonna be different. And I think you might get a rash of hookups in those 6 people or whatever, Romero Canyon, that, you know, were sitting on their letters. They might be like, "Oh, wow, okay, this is the time."
It's a, you know, just times, let's see, 85 times 13, 1, 2, 3. I don't know how far those go back in time. I'm just making a guesstimate on those 85. But if calculations work out that if you go back in time and interest we could have earned at the district was 13,000 per, you know, potential ratepayer, that's $1.1 million. So it adds up quick.
Yeah, no question.
I hate to see the district, you know, this is 2001, it's 20 years ago. So hopefully people hooked up by then, but down there, 2007, we had 4.6%. If that's when the work was done, I don't know the timing on these 85.
Whether it's us making money or us getting them signed up, we have to decide on our priority. And I think our priority is getting them on board.
Sure.
Right? So let's give them a carrot. Look, you guys are going to save money doing it now. It's going up. And then if they don't, then we change our policy and you know, move forward. And we could every year we could have an average every year. It's easy enough on this table. When somebody comes in, what's it going to cost me? Or
Yep.
you could send them an annual letter, which is great incentive. You know, you could this year it's X amount of dollars to sign up for the sewer. It's only going up. Then it's right in front of them, and every time they have to have their septic pumped or maintained, they'll be like, "No, you know what? I just got this letter. I'm going to do that."
Gary, I concur.
Thank you.
So the question is, do we just leave it as is? The last 4 quarters averaged is 1 year, and then revisit this in 6 months, or go back in time when the work was done and just try to get back the interest that we, you know, as the district could have earned.
I think you go back and, you know, I think to Gary's point, you give them, say 6 months at the current rate. Okay. And, but I think you go back and, you know, at the time, you know, for instance, if it were in 12/31 of 13, you average the the rate.
Yeah, you could put that in their letter. If you wait until after 6 months, your new price is gonna be, you know, and
No
that's
question.
super strong incentive. It's gonna cost you $20,000 more if you delay this. So get on board. You know, that's a great incentive.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that. Do we want to essentially make that decision now that in 6 months, it's going to go back in time to the date the work was completed?
I think that's a good solution.
I agree with Eversole, yes.
Okay. What about you, Dana?
You know, this, you can make this as complex as you want to. I think right now, the current system, I think we ought to just keep it as it is and maybe take another look at it in 6 months to a year.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Do we have Doreen back in here? I saw her. No? Do you
I
see her anywhere?
can't tell if she's caller 1 or not. Let me text her. I know she's trying to reboot her computer. I sent her the number for call in.
I would like to hear her comment on this too.
Director Johnson, are you on the phone? Can you hear the meeting? I don't think so. I think she's still trying to revert her computer. Hang on 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I like to say that Dana, I think this is a strong incentive. I don't know why we would really like to wait 6 months. We can go ahead and do this now. We already know this is a great incentive and we want to bring people on. That's the whole goal here. Septic tanks are bad for the environment and ultimately it's going to be cheaper. The more people that are using our system, the economies of scale, it gets better for everyone. So I would suggest that we don't put this off any longer than we have to. Let's do whatever we can to bring people on board the system.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we really,
I'll make a motion that we use the current rate for 6 months as an incentive for people to sign up for the sewer line. Otherwise, in the event more than 6 months, 6 months lapses, then it's the average by quarter of the then applicable rate.
I would second that and be that we send them a letter with the 2 numbers.
Absolutely.
well, I don't know if this is a time for discussion. So essentially, we have a policy in effect that only goes back 4 quarters and gives them that average that they decide to connect on a deferral. So we don't really need any action. We can just revisit this in 6 months.
Well, we need to send them notice.
But we need to send them notice.
Right.
In order to give them an incentive.
Okay, no, I don't disagree with that, but I don't know that we need a motion because the policy is already in effect to just use the last 4
But
quarters.
I think we ought to state that currently we'll give a pass for the next 6 months.
Oh, I see.
Okay, and then we have to send them a letter enumerating what the cost is going to be, and then say that if you defer for 6 months, that it then goes back to the rate per quarter
And,
at the at the time the main was extended.
and we can give them that number as well. So they have 2 numbers right in front of them.
Absolutely.
Great incentive.
Absolutely. I think that's a great incentive.
So Betsy's going to be doing quite a few spreadsheets. I don't disagree with that. How does the motion read right now, Betsy? Oh,
Director Barrett, I'm here. I just want to clarify before we set any new policy. I want to make sure everybody understands and that I understand fully how we go about charging it. So
So every quarter.
Yeah.
That's the interest rate through the Santa Barbara County
Right.
Treasurer tax. Okay.
Okay.
Then you take all 4 quarters
Yep.
and you get an average.
Okay.
And that is the annual interest rate that is charged.
For the whole period that they
For the
didn't
whole
connect.
year.
Okay, all right,
For the year.
thank you, Caroline. Sorry, everyone, I just wanted to make sure that we understood how we were currently doing it, so it is correct that right now we take only the 4 most recent quarters at the time of connection, and we average those 4 quarters and charge that interest rate for the entire period that they have not connected. I just wanted to make sure before we set a new policy that that is how it's being done right now. Director Barrett, what was your question that I missed while I was bouncing up to do that?
I just would like to have you reiterate what the current motion is by Director Eversole, please.
Okay, the motion as I have it is to use the current rate as an incentive to people to connect to sewer. And after 6 months from now, then we would change the policy to charge the rate applicable to the quarter in which they did not connect. So for example, instead of averaging the most recent 4 quarters at the time of connection, we would look at the history since they did not connect and charge the interest rate that you see in front of you per quarter. Which, like you said, it's a spreadsheet. It's a much more complicated calculation. You know, some of these go back farther than 10 years. And so we would need to compound the interest back to when they didn't connect at a different rate per quarter over that entire period of time. Is that what you're proposing?
Yes.
Is there a way to smooth out the wording on that? Director Eversole?
I've searched,
Uh,
but I can't find it.
If I may, we just, the motion is to send out a letter or that our current policy is, you're paying interest based on the last 4 quarters. In 6 months, we are planning, we don't, because we can wait to approve it, but we are planning to change our policy so that you will be paying interest based on what the applicable interest was every quarter since you signed up, and then we give them, we can give them that interest, or if we can just, you know, if it's a really big path that's going to take days to do, we can just put in there that, you know, we can put the interest was in, you know, we can give a couple reference points. Interest in 2017 was 6%, interest in 2015 was whatever. So you're getting a substantial advantage. You can kind of do a form letter that way, that the people will get the idea. Because what is the interest right now? It's nothing, right?
That's less than half of 1%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a substantial thing for some of these people, especially if they've been waiting 10 years. This is a gift.
I
They
agree.
should snap it up. Yeah, I think we'll get a lot of interest.
I'm fine with a letter like that, and just in lieu of staff having to prepare the exact number going back in time, just refer to some interest rates for the past, I don't know, every 5 years going back 15 years or something.
Yeah, I agree.
If I may, Director Barrett, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but the method proposed for the potential new policy 6 months from now would require a different calculation for every single homeowner. I mean, it already does because they each have a different deferral cost, but calculating every quarter for different periods of time on that deferral cost at a different percentage rate every quarter is quite a much more involved calculation per homeowner.
Well, as all
Yeah.
spreadsheets, as you know, once you plugged in one ratepayer and go back 15 years, for an example, you can use
Yeah.
that same spreadsheet for every single one after that, and go back just to the time that you need and delete the rows above that in your columns.
You'd only be doing that when they come in to sign up, so you don't have to do it ahead of time.
Well, this work only needs to be done if they don't go ahead and sign up, if they decide to defer after the 6 months,
Sure.
right?
Well, you know, if I can butt in here, you know, I'm listening to Betsy and her comments and everybody else's, of course. And if we could somehow streamline this and bring it up on an annual basis, semi-annual or whatever, so that if we're looking at interest rates, and now you say it's less than 0.5%. Well, if we just said we're going to bill at 1% now, and we'll relook at this according to interest rates in 6 months or a year, whatever, in the letter, you know, the person who receives our letter will look at a 1% interest rate, I think, with enthusiasm. You know what I'm saying? And that will be, let's say, an incentive for them to sign up. Now, let's say a year from now, interest rates have gone up marginally or even radically. At that time, we have to set policy for another rate. But trying to keep it simple.
That's not our current policy. Our current policy is 0.5%. So I think we
Yeah,
just leave
I
our current policy. You get in now, then it's going to change.
Yeah, I get it.
okay.
Well, if you go back 4 quarters, it's higher than 0.5%. What is that? You got 1.6, 1.2, 7, and 4. So it's 1.1, 2.3, 3.3, plus 6, 3.9.
So, okay,
So it's just about 1%.
perfect, perfect.
Right, the current average is 1.01%.
Pretty close.
Awesome. I stand corrected. That is perfect. Perfect.
But that's the current policy as you go back 4 quarters. So, and if we're saying 6 months, we're gonna have another quarter in there, and who knows what the rate's gonna be during that quarter. It'll fluctuate somewhat.
I agree.
But do we want, I mean, I don't have the power to, I'm not president, but do we want to form an ad hoc committee just for the preparation of this letter? Or just depend on staff to send it out, or how do we want to do this?
I think we ought to depend on staff to send it out.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think the preparation of the letter should be pretty straightforward, as long as we understand what we're trying to deliver to the public.
So do we want to pick a fixed rate like Dana suggested? Or do we want to go off I think the previous 4 quarter average is going to confuse them.
I think so too. I think we ought to adjust that maybe on a semi-annual basis or an annual basis. And have just maybe even a little bit to cover the district.
Director Barrett, do you mind if I address the board?
No.
Oh.
Please do.
In our discussion with the finance committee on the interest rate policy, staff did a little bit of modeling, and engineering manager Poitras might be able to speak to this specifically, but she and our accounting assistant Caroline deal with property owners directly and have a great understanding of the limitations that homeowners have when, or incentives that homeowners have when we're asking them to connect to sewer. And sometimes it is related to the costs of a septic system or whether they can or cannot connect. I wonder if I might suggest directing staff to do a bit of modeling before we adopt a new policy so that we can make sure that the interest rate and the new policy that we set doesn't become prohibitive in the future that would end up disincentivizing people because septic systems would be cheaper in the long run if depending on the interest rate policy we set. Does that make sense?
It does, but I agree with Gary in that a letter to these people saying, you know, the rate's currently around 1% is incentive for them to hook up, hopefully in the next 6 months.
Yeah,
If it's
and
feasible.
It's less than 0.5%.
Okay, but averaged over a year, it's 1%.
Yeah, okay, right.
So if we can, possibly simplifying Betsy's job a little bit, we don't even need to change our policy. We just say interest rates are at an all-time low. And our policy is that we hook you up based on the last 4 quarters, which is 1%. And in several years from now, interest rates are going to be going up. That's probably enough of an incentive, and it's an easier letter for her to draft, and it's clear, and nobody
Yep.
has to do any math. Because the interest rates are not going to stay here. I can be sure of that.
Concur.
So can I make a motion then?
Well, we have a motion by Don.
By
Do we
Eversole.
want to delete that and make a new motion, or how does everybody want to proceed?
I think we just make it a little clear. Do you mind if I modify your motion, Don?
Go right ahead.
So I would like to modify the motion to state, the motion is to send out a letter to the 85 or so people that are not yet hooked up, and actually to all the prospective people that we're going to be putting lines in that are on our calendar for the next year or something. It's probably going to be closer to 125 or something, but we send them all a letter that says our policy is currently you hook up, and when you do, we base your fees based on the last 4 quarters. That is currently at 1%. Interest rates will be going up. So should interest rates be at 4% in 5 years, you're going to be paying 4% on that $50,000 or whatever it is over all 4 years. So we strongly encourage you to hook up now as a cost savings or something to that effect. And then we don't have to, our policy doesn't change, but it's a perfect incentive because interest rates are so low right now.
I agree. I second it.
That's a long motion.
Well,
So can I interject here? So it's really instruction to staff. I mean, it's wordy, but I think Betsy and Carrie, do you understand what the direction is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
And
then it's
we
not
can
like you're-
summarize the motion to say that the policy is staying the same and that the board gave direction to staff to send a letter, including such wording.
It's a PR letter to inform people that this is a great opportunity to hook up to the district because rates are as low as they're going to be.
Right.
And
yeah,
If
so, okay.
Mark, if she were to prepare that draft and run it by the finance committee, is that a meeting that needs to be addressed to the public, or is it a review by the finance committee, or just leave it alone, let Betsy do it?
So I think she has instruction. If you'd like it to go to the finance committee, just have the finance committee look at it, that's fine. Obviously, the finance committee is a public meeting of a standing committee, so the public is invited to participate in that. So it's up to the board. If they want it to get run by the finance committee, let us know.
And may I ask if we should have the board president be the signatory on the letter?
I think
think-
that's advisable.
sure.
Well,
Sure.
It's that, or it could be
Because she
the,
can't
Back.
speak.
I'm back. I'm in hearing part.
Oh.
Hopefully you can hear me, but thank you for taking care of that one interest rate.
We've
I'd
already
be more than
adjourned.
glad to sign the letter.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Johnson. Director Barrett, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. I think you got.
oh, I'm not trying to usurp President Johnson's signature. I just wondered, is that an interim GM or GM type signature since it's from the district?
Usually the board president.
In the
I
past,
think
the
the
board
president can
president
sign.
has signed those letters.
Perfect. So do we have a motion that needs to be seconded, or are we agreeing just to form here?
We have a motion and a second. I believe we need to ask for public comment before we take a vote if all board discussion is concluded.
Okay.
Any
So I'll
public
open it up
comment?
Yep.
Go ahead. Thank you, Woody. Any
Ah,
public comment?
Yes,
Okay, who's that?
there.
Oh, yes. Please go ahead, Mr. Barton.
Hi, just as a suggestion, you already have this column form document that we see on the screen giving quarterly dates and interest rates in those quarters. And if you had the printout made deleting the two central columns, that might be an addendum to the letter you propose to send out to these individuals, which would give them a handy reference and perhaps an additional encouragement to sign on. That's all.
Thank you. Would you like
They can-
to? Okay, so as a suggestion, would we like to include this particular chart? Would,
No, not this particular chart. Please, excuse me. The dates of the quarters and the relevant interest rates in those times, because it would give the user a historical reference to see that what Director Fuller, I believe, absolutely correctly stated that interest rates are not going to stay down here. In some ways, I wish they would for purposes of investment and so forth, but give them the left and the right column so they can be helped to form their own opinion.
okay. Would the board like to comment on this chart? To
I agree
revise
with
it?
that if it can be prepared. The numbers in the middle, the two columns in the middle, that picking the yellow there, 1,731,000 is going to throw them off.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 1 billion in it. So then what I think Mr. Martin's referring to is just have the date and the interest rate period.
We could, staff could prepare a summary of annual averages of interest rates as an example in part of the letter, if that's an okay suggestion to make.
I think that should be added to the motion.
So,
Are you talking-
Betsy, would you go ahead and, okay, any other comment from the public? If not, we'll bring it back to the board and staff. Staff, would you be able to, Betsy, go ahead and read that motion again, please?
Yes, one moment as I write the addendum to it. Motion by Director Fuller was, in essence, the motion was to keep the interest rate policy the same, and the policy doesn't change. Direction to staff was to send a letter to the 85 deferred homeowners and all prospective connections for our current projects, stating in the letter that our policy, if you connect this year, our policy bases the interest rate on the most recent 4 county interest rate quarters, which is currently at 1.01%. Should interest rates increase in the future as we expect, there would be significant cost savings to homeowners to connect to sewer right now. And we'll attach to that letter a summary of annualized average interest rates to show an example of how low they are currently.
Bravo.
So there's a motion and a second. So is it any other discussion? If not, go ahead, Betsy, let's do roll call.
Director Barrett. Sorry, Director Barrett, you're muted.
Aye, sorry.
Thank you. Director Eversole,
Aye.
Director Fuller,
Aye.
Director Newquist,
Aye.
and Director Johnson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Betsy. So we're going to move on to the, let's see, the interest, okay, voting against properties. Okay, so we're going to move on to the policies and procedures. Is that the next item? I think it is. Discussion.
President
No.
Johnson, there's a second
Okay, I
item
missed
under
something.
sewer and main extension deferral policies saying.
I'm sorry.
discussing
Yeah, the
recording against
recording.
property.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Is that
Okay,
going to
so
be for Mark? Thank
the
you, Mark.
second item is whether the district has the ability to record something against the property in the chain of title that would give notice of all prospective purchasers of the existence of this deferred outstanding amount owed in the event they connect to the sewer district. And we also did this research back in 2003, and so looked at it again. And the answer is currently, there's nothing that would allow the sanitary district to record something against the property. There is a way to allow us to do that, and that would be by way of adoption of an ordinance. What the law in California provides is that in order to record something against a property, it has to be based upon one, a court order or a statute. And so there is no court order and there is no statute that allows us to do this. An ordinance in California is considered a statute. So if we adopted an ordinance that memorialized the sewer connection fee process and gave authority to record a document giving notice of bona fide purchases of the existence of this debt, we could do that. So it's up to the board if they want to adopt an ordinance that would allow us to record something against each property.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, back to the board. I see Woody's hand raised. Can you go ahead, Woody? Director Barrett, sorry.
That's all right. When we discussed this previously, I wasn't looking for something to record against a property such as a lien or something of that nature. It's more of a notice content letter that would be found when a title search is done by a title company, say Chicago Title. They would find it and report it to the potential purchaser of the home. That's what I was talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. In order to do that, so it's recorded in the chain of title, the district has to have the authority to record it. You have to point to a statute that says, here's a statute that says we can record this in your chain of title. And currently today, nothing exists.
But you have the wording against, which implies to me a lien, and this is not a lien. Is that correct?
It's recorded in the chain of title. It's
Okay,
a
gotcha.
document.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And can I interject a second here?
Yes, Director Newquist, please. Thank you.
I'm a realtor. I don't use my license very often, but when anybody is searching for a property, especially in Montecito, I don't know what your median price right now is for a property in Montecito, but anyway, if a interested person would come into this community looking for a property, one of their questions logically would be, are you hooked up to sewer or septic? And I don't think we need to do anything because that's a logical question for a buyer of property.
We ought to enumerate it.
Well, how are you going to do that?
By
we can pass it.
recording.
Director Eversole, go ahead, comment, please.
Yeah, by following, Mark's suggestion that we, we file we enable the recordation of the sewer main.
Via an ordinance?
Yeah. I think Mark suggested that.
And he said that's the only way we could do it. but-
Director Fuller, let me call on you, please.
Okay.
Would you like to make a comment?
Yes,
Director
please.
Fuller?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead, Director Fuller.
We are dealing with sophisticated buyers. They're spending millions of dollars. I really feel they already are crucially aware of what school district and all kinds of other things that go along with the piece of property, and the septic and sewer system are already well on their radar. I don't think anybody's buying a property and then they're somehow surprised by any of this. So I think our efforts really spent at encouraging everybody that owns a piece of property to hook up is going to be great. This seems like a lot of work for little benefit, for my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Barrett.
So this is a circumstance why I brought it up, and I agree with Gary that, people buying houses in this magnitude are sophisticated. In my mind, I don't think there's any notification. I have not purchased a home in Montecito with septic system, so I don't know. But say you did, and it's on septic system, that system is working correctly. But in the future, 5 years later, you want to hook up to the sewer main. Well, you think, well, it's going to be 10, 12, 15,000, depending on how far it is to hook up to the sewer main, and go, oh no, you got a connection fee. Your deferral is 72,000 plus 3% interest for the last 5 years. So you're at 100 grand. That would be a shocker. That's what I was trying to avoid with this notification as of record for a new homeowner that purchases a home that's on septic.
Again, I don't think that's going to be a shocker.
Well, wait, let's wait before, because just for the record, we have to see who's talking. So sorry about that. Let's go back to legal counsel. I think, Mark Manion, would you like to make some additional comments?
No, I have nothing to add. So I'm happy to answer questions, but I have nothing to add.
Director Fuller, go ahead.
If I may, I think we're underestimating the intelligence of the people that buy these properties. I do not think that's going to be a shocker. Everybody that I know, when they're looking at a home, they want to know, is it sewer, is it septic? Because they usually want to build, and they're well aware when you build, you have to qualify that septic system, and they rarely do. Everybody knows this is something that's factored in. And it's, more important than a school district or something like that. Just because if you have any wherewithal, you're just going to know this. I don't know how much time and effort we want to spend on doing an ordinance and putting it in so they're well aware of it. I just think they're already going to be aware of it. There's very few people that are, what the heck? So thank you.
Thank you. Director Duquesne, please.
No, I agree with Director Fuller. It's, I think, a waste of our time to be thinking about an ordinance to alert people on the possible purchase of a property that might be on septic. I think we don't need to do this.
I concur with Director Fuller.
That was Director
Eversole.
Eversole. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I concur with Director Fuller. I think it complicates it. I withdraw my suggestion.
Director Barrett, please.
So just a quick question. Someone buys a home that's on septic. How will they know what the deferral amount is?
They're going to call you, Woody.
I won't have it. Betsy's going to have to do the spreadsheet.
I think they're going to ask their realtor that very valuable question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back. So let's bring it back to, is everyone else has made a comment? So let's go ahead and bring it back to the public. If anyone has, anyone from the public like to make a comment or question?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Martin from the public.
Yeah, yes. Every listing agreement that I see as an investor has a section septic or sewer. And it says right there, is it a septic system, sewer, whatever. The question is not answered, however, is it paid for? And I'm not sure that most people, maybe no one, would think to ask, well, is that sewer system hookup paid for? And that leaves the potential for future dispute. And you can do whatever you want, but I think it's certainly possible to underestimate the intelligence of many people. And no one's going to ask, is it paid for? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from the public? Okay, so bring it back to the board. What would the board like to entertain? Would they like to go ahead and do an ordinance and change, or a letter, or what would you like to do? Or would you like to do nothing? Or would you like to do what our legal counsel suggested?
If
So-
I may comment,
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not, President Johnson, I'm not recommending this approach. I'm just giving you options. So I'm agnostic whether you have something recorded or not. That's a decision on the board. So I'm not making a recommendation. So, but if you want
Okay.
something recorded, there's a process to do it. So, and I think my impression from the conversation is nobody's interested. So I think it's just no action.
Director Newquist, thank you. Mark.
yes, I agree. Mark has already said it. No action is necessary on item 2I.
Okay. So there's no action. Is there, let's go ahead. Betsy, do we need to at least do a roll call or anything like that? So we make sure that everyone is on recorded?
President Johnson, there's no motion on the table if we're
Okay.
not taking any action, so I think we're probably okay to move on to item C.
Let's go to item number C, which is the policies and procedures. And thank you all for the earlier comments. So we're going to go discussion of the existing purchasing policies and procedures. And I know that there was some possible questions on the purchasing policies as far as the $10,000 of Director Barrett.
I was confused, or I am confused. Pick, for example, Ribbon Rock. The board has voted to fund that project for septic conversion to sewer. And of course, we have some deferrals in there. Once a project has been approved like that, my impression is that unless it exceeds $10,000, staff doesn't have to notify, I guess, the board or finance committee. Is that the current policy?
Madam President, Directors of the Board, if I may, the
Go
general
ahead. Go ahead.
the general manager does have purchasing authority for purchase orders, which is usually purchase of goods or services up to $10,000. Our purchasing policies became a little more involved and complex in November when 2 resolutions and an ordinance were adopted, and staff are still becoming familiar with those. But the resolution states, I mean, how do I summarize this correctly? The resolution adopted would allow the general manager to enter an agreement for such a project up for professional services up to $60,000.
$60,000?
Yes, that's in one of the purchasing resolutions under the Uniform Public Construction Accounting Act.
Okay.
But generally, the district is not going to enter into a contract for like a sewer main extension without acquiring the authority of the board and the authorization of the board.
Could I maybe offer some comments?
Of course, legal counsel, yes, Mark Manion, please.
So it's my opinion that the district's purchasing resolution and purchasing procedures are unnecessarily complicated. And what happened in 2019 or 2020 recently, the district decided by resolution to become subject to what's referred to as a Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. And that provides certain flexibility that, in my judgment, a district like the Montecito Sanitary District doesn't really need. It's an act that is better for cities and counties that do large and a lot of public works projects. There's a discussion about force account, and what force account is when a public agency decides to have its own employees do what would otherwise be a public works project. And there's a lot of controversy associated with that for obvious reasons. You're taking work away from a prevailing wage public contracting party and having your own employees do it. And so there's considerable controversy associated with that. And then there's a lot of discussion in this act about the accounting principles used. And so a district like the Montecito Sanitary District, there are two separate things that apply. There's a provision in the government code that says the sanitary district like this has to adopt regulations governing the purchase of supplies and equipment. Okay, and you're afforded discretion in how you do that. It also, there's a section in the public contract code that talks about the procedures for contracting for public works projects. And what the public contract code says now is it sets that limit at $15,000. So any public works project, and that's anything you do, sewer replacement, building a pipeline, construction project, anything that you do in that area that's going to be over $15,000 in total cost, you have to go through a competitive bidding process. Less than $15,000, you can avoid public bidding. And public bidding adds administrative time, administrative costs, administrative burden. Arguably, it gets you a better price, gets you a more kind of transparent process, but it adds costs because of the administrative. And that's what generally applies to the sanitary district. So anything above $15,000, you go through the competitive bidding process. Anything less than $15,000, you go through. You don't have to go through that. What this Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act allowed you to do was create some different rules, and that's why where you got this. It increased those amounts that allows you to avoid competitive bidding certain projects. And it ostensibly allowed the general manager to enter into a professional services contract at $60,000 or less. One thing I want to say, that's just the procedure for entering into that contract. It doesn't matter if the contract is for $100. The board has to approve the appropriation of the funds and the expenditure in the budget. So it's not as if the general manager could just go out there and appropriate $5,000 and enter into a contract. You folks have to approve that. That has to be in the budget somewhere. And then we're talking procedure of how you enter into those contracts. So I think what you folks, and obviously there was a lot of time. I looked at your policy procedure that your interim general manager prepared, and I couldn't follow it, and there were mistakes in it. The resolution that you adopted or the ordinance you adopted referred to a section of the public contract code that applies to cities, not to the section that applies to sanitary districts. So it's just obvious that what was given to you is a methodology that doesn't really fit with what you folks do. And my impression in talking to Carrie and Betsy and Alex was that, wow, we're trying to figure this all out, and we have 7 different forms of contracts. We have, it's all, and it doesn't need to be that complicated. And so what I would suggest is maybe we need a more thorough policy than we had before, but you have a simple single purchasing resolution that talks about how you acquire supplies, how you acquire equipment like you're required to do, have a provision in there of what you do on public works projects, when you bid them, when you don't. And also professional services, engineers, architects, attorneys, because obviously you don't want to necessarily get the cheapest architect. So I just think there's a simpler process, and it can be a thorough process. It's worked for the district, or it worked for the district for a number of years, and I just think the intentions were good. I just think going to this new policy has just complicated things considerably, and frankly unnecessarily for a district of your size. So, but again, the one thing is, irrespective of the value and authority you give the general manager on when they can enter into contracts with versus the board entering into a contract, you have to appropriate the funds in the budget. So you have to give, that's your approval. So, whether it's $5,000 or $10,000, it's just, do you want to see every $5,000 contract for an engineer designing a line? Maybe you do. And if that's what you want, then every single contract can go to the board and be approved by the board. But you have the ability to not have some of those come to you for administrative convenience. And it's just a matter of what that number is. So I just think it's important to preface this conversation with those remarks. And maybe I'm wrong, and Betsy or Carrie or whomever, if you think the current system is perfect and you don't want to change them, then let's fix it a little bit better. So
If I may be so bold as to speak for staff, I think you're spot on, Mark, and we would appreciate a simplification.
okay.
Thank you. Was there any other comments or questions? Okay, I see Director Barrett.
Just briefly, Mark, would it be appropriate to make a motion, second it possibly if the board approves, to terminate that resolution from November of last year and just go back to our regular accounting method?
So there's a process. We by resolution back in October or November of last year, you elected to, be subject to this act. So there's a procedure to unsubject yourself to it, and it's another resolution. So if the board wants to go to this simpler approach, I suggest that we just put this on the next agenda, and we'll do two things. One is a resolution unsubjecting us to the act, and then bring a resolution that creates a new purchasing resolution that deals with everything: supplies, equipment, professional services, and public works projects.
Do you want to put it to the next meeting because it's going to be a lengthy discussion, or we can't do that now?
No, there's a resolution that needs to be adopted, so we need to draft a resolution, and so
gotcha.
we just don't have the stuff here.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, should we bring this back out to the public? Is there any public comment? Betsy, do you see anyone raise their hands?
I don't see any hands raised or unmuted members of the public right now.
Bring back to the board, and based on what our legal counsel has suggested, to bring this back to our next board meeting to review this once again, so that the resolution could be drafted. Would everybody agree to that, or do they have any questions or comments?
Agree.
I would suggest they go ahead and draft the resolution before the next meeting, I think is what Mark was saying.
Agree with Woody.
So Betsy, I think we could go ahead and put that on our next agenda, our next meeting.
Yes, for the agenda of April 8th, is that correct? Or do you want it for the special meeting?
Okay.
I think it's meeting of April 8th.
Thank you.
Will that give everybody enough time? Okay, so that's what we'll do. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go into the retention of the Zoom meeting recordings. I think there's some discussion on that, and Oh, by the way, thank you, legal counsel, for bringing all that up information. But now we're going to be going into the discussion protocol positive retention of the Zoom meetings recordings. Has everybody seen that in their packet?
Madam President, members of the board, I actually would just want to point out what's included in the board packet is an excerpt of the previous board policies and procedures manual, which we adopted a new set of policies and procedures in January. And our new policies and procedures do not include this verbiage. So we currently have no policy on Zoom recordings.
Can you
Because
go ahead, Betsy, please, to go ahead and read that section 8-1, the preparation of, not the minutes, but the audio tape part. Can you go ahead and read that?
our
Or you-
old,
Go
yeah,
read the whole thing. Go ahead and read the whole thing.
the whole thing. Section
Yeah,
8-1
preparation of minutes.
says preparation of minutes with the assistance of the general manager, the district administrator, and clerk to the board of directors shall provide written minutes of all meetings of the board from meeting notes and from meeting audio tape if needed. The audio tape will be kept until the board by motion has approved the minutes. The written minutes shall be considered the formal minutes of the district, and the audio tape record shall be thereafter promptly erased.
I have a question on that. Has this been done previously for a number of years, or is this just, can you give me some history on that, Betsy, about how long has that been erased? Because usually on some of the county boards, they believe they kept the audio tapes for some time.
I believe this was in place. We don't have historical audio tapes going back prior to any of the, minutes being adopted. So this has been in place for how long? I'm not certain. But the note I'm trying to interject is that this policy is not a part of our current policy. So we don't actually have written direction on when to remove recordings of the meetings.
Okay, so basically, let's bring this back to the board, because I think there's a discussion that should be talked about. So let's go ahead. Dana Newquist, you're on that. What is your,
Yeah, well, this was discussed at length at least a year ago with the previous board, and what should be retained, how long it should be retained. And I would have to go back in my notes to determine what was decided at that point. But what had been done previous to that discussion, soon after minutes were approved in a meeting, the tapes of the meetings were destroyed or taped over. And there was a question whether or not we should do that. So if in our policies and procedures, we want to change what has been done before, we probably, I would guess that maybe an ad hoc committee might be appropriate to discuss this, because it's of importance. It's a historical document. And we should bring that back to the board as an agenda item.
okay, thank you, Director Newquist. I see Director Barrett would like to make a comment. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dana's correct. It was about 9 or 10 months ago, we discussed this at board level. And at that time, Tony said they were running out of space to store all the little microcassette tapes. Because essentially they were saving all the audio tapes in perpetuity. To my knowledge, they were never erased. And so then at that time, General Manager Diane Gabriel put forth that as soon as the written minutes are approved, the audio backup would be deleted. Of course, now fast forward into today, we have Zoom and we have quadrillion terabytes stored in Norway on ISP servers. There's no problem with storage. So some of the public would probably like to look back at some of these meetings, maybe, I don't know. It could be a deal where we keep them for 12 months and then delete or something, or keep them in perpetuity like it was beforehand. But I just thought it would be something for the board to discuss and decide which way to go. Right now, according to Betsy, it's not in our policies and procedures. So statistically speaking, they should be kept in perpetuity until the board makes a decision on this.
Madam President, directors of the board, if I may, it's not entirely free to store the recordings by Zoom. Zoom charges us for storage, and that was, I believe, part of the motivation for the policy to remove them once the minutes were drafted, because they charge a hefty, not hefty, but they charge a significant fee if we exceed a certain amount of storage, which is really maybe 2 meetings. So we can figure out another electronic storage method, and I can work to figure that out so that it would be free. But currently recording with Zoom, just for the record, is not free.
Is there any other board member that'd like to make a comment? Where legal counsel like to
Sure.
advise us on this? Thank you.
Sure. So the storage of tapes is actually governed by the Brown Act. And what the Brown Act provides is that if for any reason whatsoever, a public agency makes a recording of its meetings, the public agency is statutorily required to maintain that recording for 30 days. After that 30 days, it's free to delete them, erase, or do whatever it wants. So while it's a good idea to have a policy, the fact that you don't have a policy doesn't really preclude you from instructing staff to follow the statute. In other words, keeping the recording for a period of 30 days, which is usually the time frame within which the new minutes are adopted. You meet every month, and then you can delete the recording. So you don't really, it's not a fatal defect to not have this policy. On the other hand, if you want to maintain the recordings in perpetuity for whatever reason, then that's something you should probably create a policy that says, that it's the district's policy to keep it and maintain its recordings in perpetuity. And then obviously there's going to be some costs associated with that, and you'll have to make arrangements to pay for that storage. But if the plan is to simply erase them every 30 days as a matter of routine, or every 60 days, whatever the case may be, that's allowed by statute.
Is there any other comment or questions from our board on that? I personally I've had some calls where they heard from people that they wish they did have a recording where they could actually go back and research because they couldn't find it on the minutes, and maybe they could see it on the video. So maybe we should have, bring this up to our next meeting, but have the policies and procedures meet and discuss this further and come back with recommendations and see if that would be something that we would entertain, this 30 days or 60 days or longer. So would that be something that's open to our board to have the policies and procedures committee meet on this?
Fine.
Are you anyone shaking their head yes or no?
No, fine.
Mr. Eversole?
Do it.
Huh? Do it? Okay. So committee members, Director Newquist and Director Barrett, would you like to go ahead and we'll set up a meeting or ad hoc where you two could discuss that and bring that recommendation back to our board because it's not in the policy. Okay.
Glad to. We have someone in the public that'd like to speak too, Madam
Okay.
President.
Yeah. And okay. So anyway, is there any comment from the public?
I have one. This is Sharon Byrne, and I'm not going to comment specifically on the policy, but I did want to address Zoom. As you know, at the Montecito Association, we do all our meetings on Zoom as well. We do record them to a computer, thus avoiding the Zoom storage charges. And then we upload them to our publicly shared Google Docs so that anybody that wants to see the meeting sometime in the future, it's always available and always accessible. So I just want to share that there are ways to get around the Zoom storage cost if you decided to change your policy to keep your recordings.
Sharon, I'd like to put you on the committee.
I'm going to politely decline.
Oh, gosh, Sharon, you don't want to ad hoc with us?
Thank you. Was there any other comments from the board? If we don't, do you see any raised hands other than Ms. Burns? Okay,
Director
Thank
Johnson,
you.
there are no hands raised at this time.
okay. So the committee of the policies and procedures will be meeting on this particular topic and bring it back to the next meeting and it'll be on the next agenda. Thank you. So now we'll go into the next item, which is the adoption set of the meeting rules of order considering either Robert's Rules of Order versus the Rosenberg Rules of Order. And I think we could bring this back to the board, and I think legal counsel might have something to comment on this.
Sure. Let me just read from you for a quick excerpt. It says, if, and this is in Rosenberg's Rules of Order, it says, if one is chairing or running a parliament, Robert's Rules of Order are a dandy and quite useful handbook for procedure in that complex setting. On the other hand, if one is running a meeting of, say, a 5-member board with a few members of the public in attendance, a simplified version of the rules of parliamentary procedure is in order. So this was adopted for an entity. When I say this, Rosenberg's Rules of Order were adopted for a body exactly like yours. Everybody, not every, County of Santa Barbara, I think, uses Rosenberg's Rules of Orders. Many of the other local public agencies use it. It's just a simplified process as opposed to Robert's Rules of Order. So for that reason, I would just recommend using that. I mean, I suspect we'll probably never consult Rosenberg's Rules of Order. I mean, if we start to get into parliamentary debates, then something's gone awry. So, but it's good to have just to help, provide some order to the conversation and the discussion. But it's more than adequate for this type of public agencies to use Rosenberg's.
May I comment on that, Mark?
Sure.
Yes,
You
go
haven't-
ahead, Director Newcastle.
You having said that, do we even need a motion to adopt that, or just can we, as board members, just know that we're using Rosenberg's?
So what typically the public agencies that I represent do is you adopt an annual resolution that has procedural stuff in it. Your meeting date for the year. And you'll adopt that probably in December of every year. And you do a number of things. I would suggest just putting it in that resolution.
Okay.
And it'll be there year in and year out, and then we know. So
Okay, very good.
I think
Okay, I do
instruction is
have a
fine, and
question.
we'll correct it when we do that
Okay.
resolution next year or at the end of this year.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Uh-huh.
The question I have is to legal counsel. Apparently the Roseburg has quoted that some concerns about the substitute motions. Maybe you could clarify that. They said that could be confusing versus against the widespread use of substitute motions. Isn't it better to defeat the motion than to propose a new one?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe you could go into that.
So that's exactly the reason why you have Rosenberg's Rules of Orders instead of Robert's Rules of Order. Because if you get into things like substitute motion as opposed to amended motion, you could spend hours debating that and looking at Robert's Rules of Order and trying to understand them and how they apply to this type of a body. Of whether, for example, what we did on item number 2, when Director Eversole made a motion and Director Fuller wanted to revise it. Was that going to be a substitute motion, or is it simply amending the motion? And Robert's Rules of Order can get you caught up in this endless debate over what it is and what the proper procedure to doing it is. Under Rosenberg's, you handle it basically the way we do. It's a friendly amendment. It's a simple process, and you don't get yourself caught up in some, endless debate over whether it's a substitute motion or an amended motion and all these other things. And so it just simplifies it for bodies like this.
Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Director Barrett.
I like things simple, and based on what legal counsel has told us, it sounds like the Rosenberg Rules of Order is the one we should
Amen.
adopt.
Amen.
Now, I think another question is, you said that the county is also using this, the county of Santa Barbara?
I think I just saw one of their agendas recently where they did that. I know that the city of Santa Barbara does, and Montecito Fire Protection District does. Anyways, it's recommended by the California League of Cities, which is a good organization for this type of governance stuff. So,
Madam President, Directors of the Board, I believe I just saw this month's agenda for LAFCO, they adopted Rosenberg's Rules of Order.
maybe it was LAFCO that I saw it on. That may be right.
So I think what I'm hearing, does the board actually like to entertain the Rosenberg versus the Roberts rules? I mean, Roberts rule
Amen.
has an incredible history, so.
I think we ought to adopt Rosenberg's Rules of Order. I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
I'll say,
Director Fuller, was that a second with your hand in front of there? Was that a second, Director Fuller?
Second, yes,
Okay.
second.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we'll go back to bring this back to the public. Oh, well, I guess this is a motion already on there, so we could go ahead and do a roll call and then bring it back. Oh, well, I haven't had the public viewpoint. So any of the public like to comment on our motion? Okay.
Madam
So-
President, I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so Betsy, go ahead and let's do roll call.
To summarize, the motion by Director Eversol would be to adopt Rosenberg's Rules of Order the next time the district sets a resolution adopting policies. And the vote is seconded by Director Fuller. Director Barrett.
I'm sorry, Betsy, I don't think that was his motion. I think his motion was to just adopt Rosenberg's Rules of Order. And then
Okay.
what we'll do is we'll make sure that the annual resolution will include that.
Okay. Director Barrett,
aye.
Director Eversol,
Aye.
Director Fuller,
Aye.
Director Newquist,
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye. Just because it simplifies everything. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go move on to the proclamation. And we do have a beautiful proclamation. This is item number D. And I think that we're just going to pull that up. And this is for Alex Alonso, who's been with the district for 10 years, but actually retiring after 34 years. So Woody, do you see the proclamation?
I do. I see it on the screen.
Okay. You've been appointed to actually officially, because you have been here 2 years prior to all of the new board members. And we thought that it'd be good if you go ahead and if you'd like to read the proclamation to Alex.
I would be proud to and honored. The Montecito Sanitary District official proclamation. Proclamation of the governing board of the Montecito Sanitary District honoring Mr. Alex Alonso, Operations Manager, for over 10 years of service to the district. Whereas Mr. Alex Alonso has dedicated over 10 years of his career to the Montecito Sanitary District, its staff, and commitment of service to the residents of Montecito. And whereas Mr. Alonso has dedicated over 30 years of his career to the sanitary and wastewater treatment industry and his commitment of public service. And whereas Mr. Alonso has worked over the years to ensure the proper management and maintenance of the Montecito Sanitary District operations and that of the wastewater treatment plant are in compliance with all state and federal standards. And whereas Mr. Alonso has, during this time, developed and implemented many successful procedures and recruited and retained competent employees, resulting in a more efficient and effective operation. And whereas Mr. Alonso has, during this time, developed an expectation of higher level performance and professionalism of operators rarely found in this industry. And whereas Mr. Alonso has worked tirelessly to ensure the protection of public health and safety and preservation of the natural environment through the safe collection, treatment, and disposal of wastewater. And whereas Mr. Alonso, following the 2018 debris flow disaster, aided the organization in effectively and responsibly in managing excess wastewater influent due to the debris flow and repairing the system without hesitation or delay. And whereas Mr. Alonso exudes a commitment to professionalism as a leader in public service and has continually provided to the district staff loyal and dedicated training, mentorship, guidance, and outstanding leadership. Now, therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that the governing board of the Montecito Sanitary District does hereby acknowledge Mr. Alex Alonso for his lifetime level of dedicated commitment to work in service of public and environmental health and safety for the residents of Montecito, and hereby commending him on a career well served, and wish him health and respite in his retirement.
Bravo.
Thank you, Alex.
Amen.
Thank you.
Happy retirement, Mr. Alex.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Alex.
So much. Okay,
Let's send him a virtual cake.
yeah, we all have to sign his proclamation, the board members. Okay, so
Okay.
thank you again, Alex, for your continued service and retirement. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our committee reports, and we do have the Finance Committee. Do you like to make a report? Director Eversole, as the chair of the Finance Committee, would you like to make a report?
I will.
Thank you.
We discussed the new rate study, we asked for a new rate study. And we wanted to ensure that we're not charging more than we are charging more than neighboring communities, and we want to review that. We discussed the cash on hand, and we believe that it's $3 million to obtain a AAA bond rating. We discussed the daily hookup, a rate and hookup fee, and can we raise it? And that was discussed under, I guess, under B, under B, 5B, and obviously that was discussed, and that was our discussion.
Any questions from the board? Okay, I see. Betsy, do you see anyone? Raise your hands.
I don't see any hands raised.
Back to the board. Any other questions or comments or anything? Okay, so thank you, Dawn. Okay, so we had our Personnel Committee, which was on, let's see what date we had that on. February 23rd, just last week. So
It's actually Tuesday the 9th, this week.
Director Fuller, I'm going to go ahead, and you want to give a report?
Well, we discussed the thing that I wanted to discuss. Wasn't on the agenda. The hiring of Gary Phillips, but I since we did discuss it, as far as I know, we have signed a contract with him now. Is that correct?
Okay, that's not on our agenda, so we talked about our personnel, so there's some things that we did
Mhm.
talk about the personnel, so let's go ahead and,
So
there was a
maybe,
chart,
D-
there was a
Director
chart
J-
that we had.
Director Johnson, maybe before we move on, I just want to, I mean, Director Fuller's been interested. So the contract was sent to Bob Murray and Associates, I think 2 days ago. They had a few comments back, and I think those are being revised. So I would expect that contract to be signed sometime this week or soon.
Okay,
Thank you
good.
so
As long as we've taken care of that, that was the most pressing thing to me. And I don't have my notes handy at this point in time, but we talked with Mr.
So-
Tony Wong, et cetera.
So Director Fuller, thank you for the update, legal counsel. So we did have a chart that we looked at, and everyone has the chart. I think that goes into maybe possibly the next item.
Madam Johnson, directors of the board, actually, we could save it for manager reports, but I believe that interim general manager Tony Wong was going to give an update on that committee report after doing a little bit of research, which he and I conducted. I've shared on the screen an excerpt from the packet. However, this has been updated. There was a requested update to include Tony Wong on the interim general manager line instead of showing it as vacant, but this was the topic of the discussion of the personnel committee meeting on the 9th. And as you can see, this will be an updated organizational chart as proposed by staff that would become effective on March 22nd, which is the first Monday of a pay period immediately following the retirement of operations manager Alex Alonso. All of the actions taken to enact this new org chart are under the authority of the general manager, but of course we bring it to the board as a courtesy and discuss with the personnel committee just to keep everyone abreast of changes in staff at the district. So Tony, if you want to make any comments related to the changes that are going to happen, or if you would like me to summarize, please let me know.
Yes, I remember at the meeting that I requested some document which you furnished to me. The employee handbook, the personnel committee policy, and so on. So I studied that and reviewed that. So I wanted to at least express my opinion, and congratulations to Alex for his retirement. So in the short time, I'm on my second week right now, and I think I haven't really get into all the detail and the history and all those elements of the personnel and things like that. But I think I did raise the question about moving the change of personnel from classification up at this time. When I reviewed the personnel committee policy, that the board has to really adjust to the review of staffing structure and needs. And there's also succession planning review is under the committee to present it to the board for action. So being an interim, I think I really wanted to defer this action for the board's discussion. And I know that Bessie has said that I have the authority, but my authority can always be questioned by the board of directors. So I would like to at least for the board of directors to share their opinion based on the chart that's outlined by Bessie over here.
Okay, I do have some comments too. Thank you, Tony. I know that our committee, maybe this goes back to Betsy, our personnel committee. I don't believe we have seen, or maybe we have, the personnel employee handbook. That's something that our personnel would be reviewing
Are
or
you
look
talking
at.
about the employee? Yes, I can I sent the employee handbook to the personnel committee earlier this year before the first meeting this year. So that has been shared, and yes, that is something that the personnel committee can address and update.
Okay, and then that's the personnel one, and then the employee handbook as well?
Yes, I sent you the employee handbook. I can also share the personnel committee handbook if I did not already. I believe I shared them both in
I don't
January, but I
believe
can send you both of them.
Well, do you have the date when that was sent? And then also too, let's go ahead and send that, because I think our personnel needs to review that. Also too, on the Montecito Sanitary District salary rate. So should we actually, the committee actually review that as well? Because the salary is reviewed by the entire board. The board will give the final approval, I believe, for the salary. And then I think legal counsel could maybe help comment on some of this, what I'm trying to ask for.
The salaries were approved, the salary ranges and range tables were approved with last year's budget. They are on our website as part of the budget, I believe in the June 11th board packet. And you know, the board does negotiate a salary when they recruit a new general manager. But at the staff level, we have an approved salary range schedule already. And that would be addressed and revisited and revised potentially with the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
Okay. So I think I don't know if it would, because I didn't get a chance to really look at this. I don't know when this was given to us, but I think there's somewhere in the book, and I just kind of went through it just right before our meeting. I thought the salary is approved by the entire board if anyone is promoted. Is that correct? Or is
One
that
moment,
just-
let me read the section from the employee handbook on promotion. I'll just need one moment to navigate to it.
I just like to have that section about the board approval part. Is that in the personnel or is that in the salary? I think it was the salary part.
The board approves the salary range tables annually, not individually at the time of promotion.
So legal counsel, would you like to help comment on this, please?
Well, let's wait to see what Betsy comes up, but this is consistent
Okay.
with what I would understand, is that, as we discussed earlier, Director Johnson, the board approves as part of its budget the salary and the salary ranges for particular employees. So that sounds correct to me.
The employee handbook states a promotion is defined as a move up in pay grade and position, responsibilities and skills. It defines transfers. It's the district's desire to promote from within the organization whatever operationally efficient and appropriate based on skills, knowledge, and other competencies of employees in light of vacant position requirements. And in contrast to external qualified applicants, at the time of promotion, consideration may be given for a promotional pay rate increase based on related experience, internal equity, and the length of time since the employee's last performance. In all cases, promotions will reestablish the employee's new performance evaluation date, but such change will not alter the employee's history or seniority. So it changes to staffing levels. I mean, I would need to dive deeper into the handbook, which, as you can see, is a 90-page document to explore the authority that it grants, but generally staffing below the general manager level on the organizational chart that we just shared is within the authority of the general manager and is not revisited upon promotion with the board each time.
So then my question is, the authority would be the general manager that makes the decisions on the promotions, and then as far as the increases of their salary. Okay, And again, because didn't they vote, the board vote for like a 3% increase last year?
That's annually when they consider changes to the entire structure at the time of approving the fiscal year budget.
And so when the fiscal budget is coming up in July?
We are a June to July fiscal, excuse me, a July to June fiscal year budget, yes.
And then is there another review, some kind of a merit or something, review of employee?
No, merit reviews are on an individual employee basis upon their anniversary date.
So now would our interim general manager be able to actually evaluate the promotions of the A&O?
You mean the operations manager?
Yes.
Yes, the general manager has the authority to promote employees, to set their salary range, salary level within the board approved salary range tables for the current fiscal year, and to enact those promotions and grant those raises.
Okay, and I believe you mentioned in our meeting, the committee meeting, that there was going to be several promotions, not just the one that's the A&O. Was that? Did I
That's
hear that?
correct. So
correctly?
Alex, what this updated organizational chart reflects is that Alex Alonso, our current operations manager, will be retiring. And we recommend to the interim general manager that Ricardo LaRude, our longstanding collection system supervisor, collection and maintenance supervisor, be promoted to operations manager, and that the lead collections system maintenance operator, Steve Morales, who's also been with us for a long-standing time, is an outstanding professional, be promoted to collection system supervisor, which is Rico's current position. So in accordance with our employee handbook, which clearly states, you know, it is our goal whenever operationally possible to promote from within. That's exactly what we're doing here with Rico and Steve, to fill the open positions that are left with Alex retiring, and that we would hire at the entry level, as you can see down here, a collection system maintenance operator, either a 1 or an operator in training.
So there's like 4 people that are being promoted within the
2.
2? Okay.
Yes.
Because I thought you mentioned also the laboratory person, the lab, or Carol? Was it?
I explained that the org chart reflects a slight restructuring and is a little more simplified than our previous org chart, but Carol has always been a manager. And the update to the org chart, I could show you the previous one if you want, but the updated org chart shows her at the management level in line with operations manager, engineering manager, and district administrator. Whereas previously it showed her kind of on her own level as being supervised by Alex.
Thank you, Betsy. So you're suggesting these promotions, and then the interim general manager or the new general manager could go ahead and promote these people. Is that correct?
Yes, however, we really need to maintain operational efficiency, and Alex is retiring at the end of next week. We would like for these to take effect March 22nd.
Any other comment from legal counsel or the interim general manager?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that in my short time, which is my 2nd week now, and I would make a suggestion for all the promotion would be at least on the interim base, so it's not to affect the new general managers comes in, that he can have the flexibility, because I'm just temporarily holding the spot. But it's true that if we ask the employee to perform higher level of work, we should pay for.
Legal counsel, would you?
No,
have any
that seems completely sensible, that that the interim general manager who's been there for a week isn't really in a position to evaluate and provide the promotion. So, and that should be something done by the to be hired permanent general manager. Of course, you need people to fill these positions. So it sounds like the outgoing operations manager has identified someone on his staff that, I mean, it sounds like he recommends him for the permanent promotion, which is great. But I think it would probably be most appropriate at this point to make these interim promotions, provide a bump in pay, which I think is also consistent with or standard in the industry. And then when the permanent general manager is hired, at that point, that person can make the decision to make them permanent.
Thank you.
And my understanding from this conversation is the interim general manager has some reservation, and that's why, I mean, normally if you had the permanent general manager, this would just be submitted to you as, you know, I just wanted to update you who's the new operations manager and introduce the person. But because of his status, I think he just feels more comfortable doing it this way. And like I said, it sounds sensible to me, but it's up to the board.
Now, yeah, I tend to agree with what our legal counsel and our interim general manager is talking about. I know that we do need to fill that position with the RICO, who is qualified. I know he has 9 years experience. I know when they hired Alex, he had 23 years experience. So
No, Director Johnson, Rico's been only with our district for 9 years. He has a lot more experience than just that.
well, thank you for that. But again, I just think it is important to have that position as an interim A&O until we get the general manager. So that might be just my suggestion, and I'm following really with legal and also the interim general manager suggestions.
Madam
And I
President,
think we're talking about a short period of time to take care of this. I think it's something that's important that they do. And I like the fact that they are promoting themselves within their own network in their office. But I think we do have a situation where we don't have the general manager yet. And I think it is important that the general manager actually appoints the new people to their new promotions. But again, Reiko could be definitely will be the interim A&O manager, and then and he probably will be the primary one once the general manager is on a board. So that's my suggestion.
Madam President, Director of the Board, do you mind if I ask, it seems like Alex, our current operations manager, has some comment.
yes, I do.
Alex, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think, you know, in my working with the sanitary district and also working with the city, it's always been a priority for me to be in a position to have succession planning. And in hiring Rico and in hiring Stephen and hiring the other gentlemen that people that we've hired, it's always with the vision in mind that they're going to be taken over for somebody else as somebody else leaves. So when I hired Rico and brought him in under me, I have mentored and trained Rico since day one. Rico's well qualified. Rico is a smart, top-notch employee, professional. Also, Stephen, the person that works under Rico as well, that's going to be taking his position, is a true professional. These men are committed to the district, and they're committed to doing a good job in a professional way and serve the community. So I just want to make sure that the board knows that the men that we are putting in these positions are well qualified and that they're definitely professionals and they know what they're doing and they'll rise to the occasion.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Well, we could bring this back to, is there any other comments from the
I have a
board?
comment. I have a comment.
Director Fuller?
People thrive on security, and this conversation thus far has not given me any hint that we're trying to give these guys security. We're not sure on the wage they're going to make, and it sounds like we're not even sure that they're going to be able to keep their promotion until a new GM is handled. And I don't like this direction at all. These people need security. We're capable, I believe, at this moment of picking these people and simply putting them in these positions. And if the new general manager wishes to change things, then we can go through those necessary procedures. But this is counterintuitive towards creating a good, cohesive work environment where we want people to feel they belong and that they have some security. Thank you.
I concur with Director Fuller.
Director Newquist?
I concur, but I think from what's already been said, and well, I just think that from everything that has been said previously, I think those jobs have been secured by people that have been working under the general manager and the other people that have been working in our department. So, I also believe that Tony Wong, he's so new to the department. And one of the biggest problems that we have right now is with COVID. It's hard to interact with people. So Tony is at a very big disadvantage assessing people and their duties. So, and he's deferring that to the general manager that will be selected long-term. So, and that person will have the time and the energy to do those assessments. So I think those positions will be secured by the people that have already been mentioned, and I don't see any problem that we're having here.
Director Newquist. Again, I really feel that the job security is definitely important. These people have worked here for a long time. I had met Rico on several occasions, and I think he is capable of being the future manager, if not the interim general manager immediately, just because we do need someone, and he is being trained, well trained by Alex. I guess what it is that we are going to have a general manager, and hopefully maybe we could get a general manager sooner, and that's what we're going to try to push for, rather than waiting 6 months or waiting even 4 months. We'd like to get someone, hopefully, that we could get on a board that really understands our district, someone that could possibly be local, that understands the financials, because everything I'm seeing even today is all financials, everything, and you got the salaries. So I think we could probably strive for someone that is actually a strong candidate and to come aboard and really help us with a lot of these situations that we're going through right now. I think Tony Wong is capable. He could actually, but he's new. He's been here only since March 1st. So I think that there is a time that we could allow. That's 2 months. It's like if someone is here for the rest of their career, I think they could wait 2 months. I mean, I think we're talking about 2 months. I feel like the job security is there. I don't think this is one of the best places to work for, probably at the sanitary district. And they do get really good salaries and benefits and everything like that. So again, I like to see these people promoted. I like to see Rico promoted. I like everyone. So again, but I just think it's really important to really wait for our permanent general manager. And that's what I feel really strong about.
If
And we're
if I
only
may
talking about
comment,
it months.
may I comment?
I see Director Eversole before you, Director Fuller.
No, I defer to Director Fuller.
Okay, thank you.
I hear, I'm on, right? Yeah. I hear your concerns, and I'm hearing two things from you, and you say you would like them to have security, but you would not like them to have security. And I mean, as far as
That's not
waiting for
true.
an
That's not true. I will
interim-
actually stop you right there.
Yes,
Thank you. You're not listening to what I am saying.
may I alliterate? I would like to state that we originally discussed hiring Gary Phillips in December, and we really, we did not make a lot of progress on that. We still haven't signed a contract. with
Excuse
him,
me,
and it's
Director
March.
Fuller, you're complaining, and I will actually have to interrupt you because when we hired even Kimberly Horn, it took us some time to even go through the contract. This is a contract that we had to review. Okay, the legal counsel had to do it with the language. So you're talking about at least a month. And that's how long it took us to get Kimberly Horn even aboard because of the contract. So, you're talking about money and contract. It's one thing when you say, let's go ahead with these people, but again, there's also a contract to review. Okay, so thank you.
Well, I'm not finished. We need to really put some action down here. We need some progress that getting a full general manager. I think that this whole thing is very frustrating. I do not see moving in the direction that we need to be, and I'm really frustrated with the progress we're making. I don't think we are doing as much as we can. I really think we need to be moving faster. Thank you.
Director Barrett.
This is the first time I've seen this chart. I don't know who all is getting promoted or titles are being upgraded or what percentage salaries are going to change. It seems like our interim general manager, Mr. Wong, would like to defer this to the board. So I don't know if that means the board is going to be making a decision usually made by the general manager, or at this point, interim general manager. We are going to have an operations, manager retiring on the 19th next week. I don't know if districts usually have someone lined up to fill that slot immediately. We have someone we can promote within the ranks to do that. There's really not time to discuss or think about this actually, unless we want to have a special meeting next week, which I don't think anybody wants to do. The board essentially does policy making. This is getting into staff, and the only person that the board hires or terminates is the general manager. So these are unusual circumstances. And I'm not against anything here. I just, this is usually not something that boards contemplate and talk about. It's usually handled by the general manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barrett. Director Eversole.
No, I have no comment.
If I may, again, these people need security, and what I'm understanding is that that's not in the security of the promotion is not in the plan. They have security that they have a job, but they're going to get this promotion, but it's tentative based on what the new general manager wants to do. And I just don't see that as a security that we want to provide to people who we care about and who we want them to feel that they're working somewhere that cares about them.
Okay, let's bring this back to Tony Wong, our interim general manager. Hi, Tony.
Hi.
So I'm hearing, as you know, that the general manager will be appointing and promoting these people, but at the same time, we do have Rico that will be taking the place of Alex. Would you be able to evaluate as a interim general manager to make sure that he is aboard with based on what his qualifications and what Alex had mentioned, and also his salary, I guess it's also to justify his salary increase that he needs to actually start the project? Would you be able to take care of interviewing and evaluating Rico as soon as possible for this position?
The answer is yes, but I need some time to do this. That's why I make the suggestion that he can be appointed as an interim position until such time that I make it the permanent general manager. But if I have some time to evaluate with him, then there's no problem for me to take the action. I know that I have a strong recommendation from Alex already, so I don't have anybody else in mind to promote, other than review the existing staff and follow what Betsy has given to me. And also I'm going to abide by some guidelines on the personnel committee policy. That's why I make this suggestion.
Okay, so the time that you possibly would need for the position for Rico would take approximately how long? Would you need like maybe another week or 2 weeks?
Oh, probably within 2 weeks be okay, yes.
Well, let's go
But
ahead.
I'm making a suggestion, if he takes over the position, he would have the title as an interim position already. It's not that, I already raised the issue at the committee level that he should be paid for whatever the rate qualifies.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so, and I think that's a good starting point. And I think in a way that, and we were actually trying to move quicker on getting the general manager aboard. But let's go ahead and do that. And I think if all the board agrees to that, where Tony Wong could go ahead and do the evaluation for Rico. And let's go ahead, Betsy, let's go ahead and do we need to take a vote or roll call on that, or just I think the general manager should be able to do that, right?
There's no
Yes.
motion right now.
Okay.
It's just
So-
general manager action.
Okay, so the general manager, Tony Wong, would take care of that. Thank you.
Board President Johnson, it looks like Director Barrett would like to speak.
Yes, go ahead, Director Barrett.
Thank you. I would suggest, how many people are being promoted or how many people are being raised? Are we talking about 3 or 4 or what?
Only 2.
2? But there was something happening in the lab as well?
That's honestly, it's only a change to the organizational chart.
Okay, so there's not really an increase in salary there, right?
No, Carol is not changing title or position. It just looks different on the chart.
Gotcha, okay. So that we're only looking at two, the operations manager and the collection system supervisor.
Correct.
Okay. And those, and I remember we do this every fiscal, we look at the salary range, and it may range from, say, $130,000 to $160,000. I'm picking that totally out of the air. I guess that would be up to Mr. Wong to decide where they come in as far as salary within that range. Is that correct?
That's correct. There
Okay.
are ranges for managers, and there are 5-step classes for everyone below the manager range. So
Okay.
example, step A, step B, or step C through E are generally 5% difference between those ranges. Whereas the managers get a salary range, and a dollar amount can be allocated somewhere, anywhere between the bottom and the top of the range. And part of the reason for that is, you know, whether coming from outside or promoting from within the organization, we need to be able to make sure that we can promote them to a position that would be earning the more money in order to accommodate for the additional responsibilities that they're assigned to. You know, if you've been at the top of your range for several years, you may not promote to the bottom of the manager range above you, if that makes sense.
Right. No, it's based on experience and things, but I would expand, Madam President, to have Mr. Wong evaluate, in addition to the operations manager position, also the collection system supervisor. Those two positions, that's all we're talking about, are those two. And I would feel totally comfortable with whatever price range, salary range that Mr. Wong deems acceptable for those two positions and the added responsibility. I just wanted to expand
I
it
just want to
to,
make sure that Tony Wong would be comfortable in doing that. So I will leave that up to him, and he would be making those decisions. Thank you very much.
Madam President, if I can speak,
Yes, go ahead, Alex, please.
I just wanted to let the board know that these men that are coming up for promotion are class act. We've trained them, we've worked with them. And I do agree with Board Member Fuller. You know, the men and women we have working at the district are committed, and I think they deserve that back. So again, I'm leaving, but again, at the end of the day, these men and women are still going to be there, and I would hope to think that the security that they have had in the past, they would continue to have in the future. And again, you're not going to find another class act man like Rico or Steven. I guarantee you, you can hire a headhunter and look all over the country. You're not going to find anybody like them. And you're going to spend
Thank
money.
you.
We have them here. Let's put them on board. Let's pay them what they're worth, and let's give them the security they deserve. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay,
not
so-
interim. They need to be full-time, not interim.
Okay, Director Fuller, we have to move on, but we've heard you. And okay, so Tony, we're going to leave that up to you, and I think you'll do a good job, and you have your work cut out.
President
problem.
Johnson,
No problem.
President Johnson, can I jump in here for a minute?
Yes, of course, Director
Since-
Duquesne.
Since we're under Personnel Committee, you know, there's been some discussion about we need to hurry on the general manager and also discussion on contract. I believe we've been working at lightning speed to try and get a good contract with Bob Murray and Associates. Many conversations have gone back and forth, and oftentimes 2 or 3 days will expire before they get back to me or President Johnson, which is unfortunate. But also, I would like to think maybe that Betsy has candidates that have registered with us through our website, which I believe need to be evaluated by the evaluators, which is myself and Ms. Johnson, to see if those candidates are possibly candidates for general manager. And I'd like to think that we could do that sooner than later.
Director Newquist, if I may, I forwarded you and Director Johnson as the labor negotiators all of the applications that we have received to date, as well as, yes, I've sent them all to you.
Then I would propose that myself and President Johnson actually go ahead and make dates to interview those people.
Okay. I think as a labor negotiators, I think that's a good idea. We could go ahead and interview who has applied for that position to date. And I think that would help actually what the Director Fuller had said, to get someone on as soon as possible to help us through this whole process. And that might be the best solution. So, but in the meantime, and what we should, I think we do have that ad hoc committee, so we should go ahead and continue that, so we could go ahead and process that or look at that as soon as possible.
Correct.
And maybe and of course, with the help of our legal counsel. Okay. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So is everyone good with that? We can move on to our next topic. Moving
Madam
on.
President, Directors of the Board, may I ask a question of legal counsel? Mark, if the board voted to hire a recruiter, may the board interview, the labor negotiators conduct separate interviews for the same recruitment for which the board voted to hire a recruiter?
Absolutely. So there would be nothing to prove if they received an applicant today that they were interested in interviewing, and they interviewed the person, and then the entire board interviewed the person, and the board decided to hire that person prior to engaging Gary Phillips and Bob Murray and Associates doing the work that's required under their contract. Yeah, there's nothing inappropriate about that. And just so you know, the change that's been made to their contract is, before it was just a lump sum contract. It was, once we sign on the dotted line, we paid them whatever the number is that was approved by the board. Now what's been renegotiated is it's by work product. So when they complete a certain work product, or when they start a certain work product, then there's payment for that work product. And that's what's being done, is we're waiting for Gary Phillips to assign values to each of those work products. And once we get that, then it'll be signed.
But if we interview and hire someone before it's signed, then we don't need them? Is that how that works?
Correct. Right.
Does the board have to take action to not hire them, or the full board hires the new GM, right?
Of course, right. Yes.
Does the full board interview the GM in closed session?
Of course. That's yes.
Okay, so that's not the labor negotiators. The full board would need to schedule closed session to interview candidates?
Ultimately, yes.
Okay.
So the reason the labor negotiators were assigned to this was to vet candidates, and whether that's done with the help or without the help of Bob Murray and Associates it's the same process. They may get 27 applicants and say none of them are qualified. Somebody's got to, you're not going to have the entire board review all 27 applicants, right? So.
Okay.
We would
Thank
definitely bring suggestions or anything back to the board. We're not the decision makers on this, Betsy, and obviously you and I talked about that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Strategic Planning Committee. So Director Barrett is the chair on that. Will you go ahead and make your report from the meeting on February the 25th? And we do have that special meeting also coming up. Okay, thank you, Director Barrett.
Yes, let's see here. Betsy, could you bring up that agenda for that meeting, please, ma'am?
Yes, it wasn't included in the packet, so I'll just need a moment to navigate to it. Pardon my delay here.
It might be good in the future. Of course, I don't like printing 55 pages any more than anybody else. But should we just include the agendas from these subcommittees to look at why people discuss them or give their reports maybe?
You would like the committee agendas to be part of the packet in which we give the reports? Is that what you're requesting?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
It will make it longer.
Right. It'll probably be 1 page, possibly 2 for each committee, I imagine.
Be nice.
Thank you for your patience. Here's the joint committee agenda.
Okay. So that's the joint. We're looking for the one prior to that, the February 25th meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee. We're on EIII right now.
I'm coming, one moment.
No problem. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, this meeting took place at the Strategic Planning Committee, myself and President Johnson, February 25th of this year. We talked about the recycled water preliminary design report, 30% design. We're going to get into that more into the joint meeting, so I'll leave that until the next report on March 2nd. The special counsel for LAFCO related matters, that was essentially, again, an item where the water district has a legal counsel that specializes in LAFCO matters. We discussed what the long-term plans for our district were if we needed that. No conclusion was reached. Long-range planning general, we talked about where do we want to be in a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan, which is the long-term plan, the Strategic Planning Committee's job, more or less. That entailed recycling, of course, the 2 districts, how they could work together, and just general discussion about where we want to be 15, 20 years from now. Long-range planning, we discussed with Ms. Poitras about a plan whereby we keep doing these sewer main extinctions, and I think we have, Ms. Poitras, how many people do we have on septic within our district left? Is it 200?
On septic without sewer available, no, it's closer to 300.
300, okay. And so I asked her if we could put together a long-range plan, somewhat like the water district has, of course, for different goals. The water district has, I forgot how many miles of 100-year-old pipe, and each year they replace so many, sections of that pipe, and it's a 10-year program, I believe. If we could put together a long-range plan to essentially extend the sewer mains to all 300, people that are on septic, and then pick a portion of that each year and just complete that sewer main extension and be a long-range project. And then, of course, being the organized engineer that she is, she pulled up plans that she'd already put together on 2 other areas, which take over 200 and something. There's not very many left. Is that right? With the areas that we've got. So that's already in the works. But that was what we were looking for, is some type of long-term plan. And are we talking about this amount of money, that amount of money? And it came up, I think, to hook them all up in estimates, and they were total estimates, I understand, because it hasn't been put out for bid or anything of that nature. In today's dollars, it's going to be about $18 million to hook everybody up. Is that the correct number, I think? So, which was very interesting to me, also being on the finance committee, because we have 18.3 million in cash. So I brought that up. Of course, we have lots of other projects to do. We also looked at the, we're going to have to move one of our laterals that goes underneath Highway 101 for the expansion. And Ms. Poitras explained that that was about a $400,000 project. Caltrans will not pay for a nickel of it. We're going to have to pay for it. And that's got to be done by year 2023, I believe. So we discussed all these things. These are all long range, long-term plans, but they need to be addressed hopefully within the next 12 months. So we can pick a plan and propose it to the board and hopefully move forward on these long-term, strategic planning ideas. Of course, they all have to be approved and of course talked over and discussed at board level. And that was the February 25th meeting. Did you have anything, President Johnson, or?
No, thank you. You did a good job. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? No? Okay.
If not, we'll bring it to the public. Was there any public comment?
Board President Johnson, I had a little bit of issue with your audio. I believe you asked for public comment, or I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you.
Public comment.
Okay, I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board. Okay, so if nothing is discussed, we could go ahead on the next. I think that was the last committee. So now we go into, thank you, Director Barrett.
Yeah, we still have the joint meeting.
Correct.
The joint meeting report for the 2 districts.
Yes, I've switched to that agenda from March 2nd.
Okay. Would you like me to present the findings?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this was a meeting called on March the 2nd of this year with the strategic planning committees from the water district and from the sanitary district. Of course, representing the sanitary district was myself and President Johnson. Again, here you can see the agenda up there. Items for committee consideration. Item 3A was 1 hour and 10 minutes of discussion. Nothing was concluded. It was very long and tedious, talking about all different things. The 30% design plan was confusing to me in that it takes in 100% of our effluent, which just to update, if I'm being redundant, I apologize. We have about 560,000 gallons a day of effluent coming into our treatment facility. In order to keep our duckbill valves working on our discharge line into the ocean, we need 100,000 gallons a day, I believe is what the engineering study said 2 years ago. So we really have approximately 450,000 gallons a day that we can treat maximum. This preliminary design report takes that into account, but the 30% design just takes the design of the machine to 30%. And this machine that they are working on is phase 1, which would be, of course, the cemetery and possibly the Biltmore, some other areas. So we really didn't get it defined as to, how to treat the entire 450,000 gallons a day, or whether this study would take it into effect. So at the end of the day, in that discussion, I put forth, which I've mentioned to the board once before. I have not studied every district in California. There are 54 districts discharging into the ocean right now along the California coast. Ms. Portress has probably studied half of them, if not more. But in every case that I can find, the water district pays for all studies, pays for environmental studies, pays for everything, equipment, installation, everything. The sanitation district essentially operates it on a monthly or annual fee or however they do it. The water district, of course, has the right by law, and only they have the right by law to distribute or sell the water to customers for the recycled water. So I would put forth to the board, based on this meeting and discussions, that this 30% design plan should essentially be the financial burden of the water district alone, based on all the other districts that we've studied. In that same respect, if they do pay for the entire study, which right now the estimate is $339,000, I don't think the water district, the sanitary district, should dictate what type of machine it is, the footprint or anything of that nature, storage tank size, anything. We can essentially have Ms. Portress and staff supply them with the type of effluent we have based on what our machine, our pilot project did, and is hopefully going to be back in action doing. But we're really not involved in the process at that point if they take over the study and 100% of the funding. So that, again, that's a board decision. Agreement for professional engineering services. So I think that has to do with the services that were, the engineering. Carollo is the engineering service that's going to, has been chosen and is satisfactory to both districts for the 30% design plan. Draft the cost sharing agreement. We didn't get to that because we spent so much time on 3A. We really passed that over for a future item agenda in the future. Discussions of different forms of cooperation. Again, we discussed whose role will be what. The two districts have put together, staffs on both sides, an extremely detailed plan outlining each district's responsibility. And I would put that forth, that could be an agenda item in the future for Ms. Portress to present, because she's completely knowledgeable about it and helped to prepare that. MWD October 2020 appeal of MSD site improvements development plan. I'm not sure what was concluded from that. By that time, I was I was somewhat mentally tired. Did you remember what we concluded there, President Johnson, on that item 3C?
I think what we're asking for is like the summary. We are going to have a special meeting in 2 weeks where we're going to give our board, so they'll have enough time to digest what you talked about and maybe some information, so we could go ahead and make recommendations back when we go back to them in April. So that's going to be one of the main topics. So again, just to let you know that that's on our agenda in 2 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's a board level
Just
decision,
a summary
right?
of what we did, yeah, because we
Okay.
had not made any decisions at that meeting. So we
No
will be,
no
we
decisions
will
were
be
made.
making
Yeah.
decisions, and recommendations on the 25th.
Okay,
And
all
then
right.
if,
That concludes our meeting. Did anyone have any questions on anything with this joint meeting?
and the public's invited to that meeting on the 25th as well. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Barrett.
Mhm.
So we're going to move on. Okay. That concludes, I think, our meetings of the committees. Get find my agenda here. Okay, the district operation, thank you, all committee reports. The district operation and maintenance information items. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yes, let me bring up the manager's report. Mainly this time, I believe our manager's report was generally the items that had been requested by the board to be on the agenda. Operations Manager Alonso and Engineering Manager Poitras, do you have anything to report?
No, not at this time.
Not at this time.
Oh, sorry, Betsy, do you want me to go over the industrial hygiene assessment?
Yes, sorry. The first section under item A, regular information, non-actional items. I don't think we have anything, but yes, if you would please summarize the industrial hygiene assessment that was requested to be on this agenda, that would be helpful. Thank you, Carrie. I'll bring it up from the packet.
Thank you. I was just hoping to go over the summary of recommendations. So that's on page 10 of the industrial hygiene packet.
You wanted me to go to
Page 10. It's section 6. It's page 39.
there we go.
Yep. So we had Citadel Environmental Health Services come out to the site on December 16th to do a field assessment of our existing operations building, which is the area where the treatment plant workers have their workstations, of the current administration office, the lunchroom, and the boardroom, to understand what type of potential mold issues that we might have, or noise issues, or lack of airflow. So they did a number of tests to look at if there's proper amount of air exchanges, and part of that was per the like industrial health requirements, you're supposed to have a certain number of air changes, but also with the COVID potential, there's definitely recommendations for more air exchanges. So they did an assessment on that. They also took samples of mold and fungus samples within various areas of the field area that we're looking at, and they put together a summary of recommendations. So the first recommendation, there was high levels of fungal spores within the boardroom. So they're asking that we identify the source of the elevated fungal spores in the boardroom and remove all impacted building material in accordance with some standards and reference guide. Basically, what that's saying is they recommend removing the carpeting and the flooring and potentially the wood paneling within the boardroom, and identify where the fungal spores are coming from. And the removal of moisture impacted or microbial impacted materials, which are those particular materials, should be performed in accordance with industry standards. The other issue within the boardroom is they're requesting to impact and maintain the boardroom ventilation system. What that recommendation is referring to is that we actually were not able to turn on the heater when they were here. I don't know if you recall, Woody, in the past that we had issues with that boardroom being quite cold, and the heater wasn't necessarily working consistently. So that basically, you're required to have a certain temperature and humidity within each working area per OSHA requirements, and that room in particular was not meeting any of the requirements. So they recommended doing some maintenance on the ventilation system and potentially replacing it. Also to reconfigure the HVAC fans in occupied spaces to run continuously 2 hours prior to and 2 hours after the space is occupied to ensure the minimum air change per hours is maintained. So that's basically setting up our HVAC system to more or less be on a circulation and timing system, which we don't really have that capability at this time. Our heater is able to turn on certain temperature ranges at certain times, but it's not real clear if we're able to just turn on the fan in that sense. And then in the boardroom in particular, that HVAC system, there's only heating, And it's the original heating system when the building was built. So that's a concern. The other recommendation, number 4, that they're recommending is to monitor the indoor and outdoor relative humidity and to adjust the thermostat settings and outdoor air supply to make sure that the relative humidity stays between a certain range and per the OSHA requirements. Right now, we don't really have any way to monitor that in these particular buildings. The other, number 5, the recommendation is to install portable air purifiers in certain locations to help with the air changes. And they recommended certain minimum sizes to just based on the size of the room. So I know Betsy has an air purifier in her office. There's one right near the front office entrance where Caroline sits, but we need to order some additional ones for the boardroom, for the operations building, the operations supervisor's office, which is Marco's office. And then recommendation 6 is asking that we inspect and maintain the ventilation system in the boardroom, which is kind of goes back to the HVAC recommendation, but also that recommends a portable air purifier for that particular room. There's a restroom within the boardroom that right now, when you turn on the light for the restroom, it also turns on the exhaust fan, but they're recommending to rewire the light switch so that the light and the exhaust fan are independent from one another. So you can continually run the exhaust fan and still have the light off because there's no air exchange in that particular restroom. The number 8 recommendation, so they tried to do the noise survey. That was one of our concerns, but at the time that they were here, it was actually quite cold that day. And we tend to have more noise during the summertime when it's warm, when the fans turn on our server, which is in the operations room where the treatment plant operators work. So there was actually no noise at that time because the heater was not operating and the fans on the server were not operating. So they weren't able to actually do any noise evaluations, more or less, and they recommend doing a follow-up noise survey. And then the last one, number 9, if we decide to do any remodeling of these spaces in the future or demo or renovation or whatnot, then they recommend a complete lead and asbestos survey before you do the remodel and renovation, because they are concerned that there's hazardous products in the materials that were used in the construction of these buildings that would become problematic when you are trying to do the remodel or demolition. So those are the 9 recommendations that were given as part of this report. And we're trying to kind of work through each one to comply with the recommendations. So that's it at this time.
Sorry. Thank you, Carrie. I actually suspected that all that was going to be reported on. So thank you. Let's bring that back to the board. Is there any comment from the board on this report or any suggestions or questions?
Do we know how much the fee was for this report?
Yes, I can look that up real quick. We have the contract. The contract was a not to exceed sum of $13,000. So that included all the field work and all the testing that they did. And the report that you received in the board packet is just the main part of the report. There's probably quite a few other, I don't know how many other pages, like 20 other pages of all their actual measurements and testing information.
I thought that they were going to, or someone was going to inspect for termites. And I'm surprised they didn't take samples of flooring or break into a wall, get some insulation, look for asbestos, because we really don't know if we want to remodel and do things, what we're going to encounter with this report. I'll see $13,000 in sampling air and ventilation, but I don't see anything besides that. Am I missing it?
They took some small samples of the ceiling tiles in 3 of the different areas to determine if they had asbestos in there. And they found that there was not asbestos in the ceiling tiles. Now, I asked the same question. I thought they were going to do a little bit more sampling of things. And basically what they said in their report, they could not recommend doing additional sampling at this time because we are still operating and working out of these buildings. So if we happen to find something and they kind of open things up and you impact the asbestos, then it causes other problems. So they only recommend doing those further larger reports if you know that you're going to be remodeling or demoing the buildings. It does seem like it would be nice to have those questions answered before we make that determination, but they were not able to do that.
Do you know how many people they would send out to do these field inspections and sampling? Was it 1, 2, 3 people, or?
They sent out 2 people. I know Betsy was just letting me know that they sent us 2 invoices so far, and it has not totaled up to the $13,000 contract.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Based on this, are you going to put together something as far as advice from staff on what to pursue, or do you need a budget to pursue it, or?
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about to include some money in the budget for next fiscal year in terms of the HVAC system. But also it kind of leads to the bigger kind of question. I don't think we want to be spending a lot of money on a new HVAC system if we don't really know what the long-term plan is for these buildings. So I think it kind of dovetails into a strategic planning question.
Well, my feeling is, and the way I run my business is, employee safety is number 1. And if we've got a ventilation problem, we're in the middle of a pandemic, or hopefully we're coming down the other side of the mountain of the pandemic now. I would advise staff to put together some numbers and we get on top of this HVAC immediately and get ventilation
amen.
for staff and get everything as safe as possible right now, regardless of cost, and make it a safe environment for staff to work in. It would be different if there was not a pandemic, but everything's changed. And I think we need to get to the point that everyone's, at peace of mind that they're in a safe working environment, whatever that may be.
Yep. Agreed.
I think if I may interject, they're looking for asbestos.
Director Fuller, let me call on you.
Sorry. I think the reason they didn't want to disturb more is the nature of asbestos. Once you disturb it, it's everywhere, and the containment is a huge issue. So, if we are going to invest in a new AC system, I think we might want to really get a handle on the numbers, because it could be a lot more than you're thinking. If there is asbestos up there, trying to take it all out, I mean, it could be a lot of money. So
you need to do that anyhow.
Say it again.
You need to do that anyhow.
Well, if we're going to replace, you're saying about replacing the AC, I think that's why they're mentioning adding filters, increased use of filters. I mean, we can go ahead and invest in this new system. I'm just saying sticker shock may really be something you want to be concerned with. When you get into an asbestos, I mean, $80,000 just for cleanup of the attic up there would not be out of range from stuff I've seen.
No question.
What
Okay,
is the square footage of that, Carrie?
The square footage of each building?
building that you're talking about to replace the air conditioning, the HVAC?
They made a very strong recommendation to replace the HVAC in the boardroom because it's not
Okay.
working. And then they made recommendations for the HVAC system and the air turnover and the air purifying system in the other two areas, that the admin office area and the operations area as well.
Okay. And the total square footage of those two areas, the three areas that you're talking about?
Let's see, I think it says in the report somewhere. I know the boardroom is about 300. I think the office area, I don't recall, maybe it's, you know, around 1,000, and the operations area is, I think, around 900. I'd have to look it up.
1,000, 2,000, like 2,500, the most, 2,500 square feet. Okay. So, if you probably do have asbestos probably throughout, I mean, I would think so, because that moisture, and you've had the tarps up there for a number of a long time. I think the numbers to do the asbestos will be costly, but I think once you get the bids and things like that, I think that the numbers will be something that we could still take care of. And I think Mr. Fuller's right that you probably need to look at that before you really replace the HVAC. Okay.
Well, yeah, and actually, I think I kind of misunderstood Carrie when I was listening to the comment about the stopgap of the purifiers in that front office. Then yeah, that is a relatively small area, but just keep in mind when you start cleaning up asbestos, man, I've seen prices that'll blow your mind.
Yep.
Yeah,
In the meantime, the smaller purifiers that you're going to be buying I saw them in Betsy's office and also the main office, and I think that's fine. I mean, they're just fairly reasonable, and they will at least help as far as the space temporarily, you know. But I would go ahead and pursue that and get your numbers so we can look at that, because that would be put into the budget, because that would be something that needs to be done sooner than later. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And I think that is, let's see.
Carrie, if you're done with the summary of the industrial hygiene assessment, also under informational items under district operations and maintenance, at the meeting of February 11th, it was requested that we place on the next agenda the district Facebook page, which was initiated and run by Davies Public Relations Firm. Upon that request, we looked into the status of it, and we requested of Davies PR to either give us administrative rights to that page or to take the page down, and they took the page down the very next day.
Thank you, Betsy, for doing that, for calling. So they took the page down, so they, do they still own it, or they just delete it?
It's gone. We did ask for, you know, one of the options to be to give us administrative rights, but they didn't respond to that part of the request. They just took the page down.
Okay, thank you.
We've
Thank you
saved
for,
a copy of everything that was saved, you know, posted on the district's behalf while the page was active, but now the page is gone. If there's no other discussion on that item, do you want me to talk about item 6B, agreements?
please go ahead.
There are 5 property owner agreements for pump variants and a sewer service agreement that need signing. So those have to be notarized and recorded. So Board President Johnson will need to set an appointment for you to come to the district to sign those, and Caroline will notarize them, and then I need to witness it because I also sign them as witness to your signature. And we also have the contract with Tierra for sewer main extension that was approved by the board on February 11th. It needs to be signed by Board President Johnson and Secretary Newquist. And those are wet signatures also So we'll need to set appointments for those signing.
Do you need the actual, okay, do DocuSign?
No, they need to be live wet signatures.
Can the interim general manager actually do some of the signing, or does he need to sign as well? No?
No, these
Okay.
are agreements with homeowners that are recorded and notarized, and they need to be by the board president.
And when would you like to do that?
You and I can schedule that separately. I just wanted to make it known that those are different from a lot of the contracts that we sign that can be in DocuSign or from our minutes, for example, but that they are recorded, notarized, and wet signatures. So we can organize that separately, but I just wanted
Okay.
to let you know that the nature of what's listed here in the agenda.
Thank you. Just let me know and I'll be available to sign, okay?
Okay, not a problem.
Thank you.
You can let me know what works for you as well. And then after board president has signed the Tierra contract, Director Newquist, I'll reach out to you to arrange for you to sign as well.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we talk about thank you for the reports. Now we turn to I think we already talked about the operation maintenance reports included in the agenda packet. I think that Alex said there was no agenda, or what? Did he want to make some additional?
There are standard reports that are always included in the packet that are part of what we call the manager's report. They are in the packet. If the board has no questions on those items, we can move forward. But there are operations and maintenance, usually statistics about the work that's been performed. They're found on page 14 of the packet and 15 and 16.
You want to go ahead and read those if you like, or just to summarize, or?
I'll display them on the screen, but we don't normally go through them specifically. There are plant statistics, the flows, the the nature of the chemicals used and how much on an average basis, and the amount of sludge disposal. We only had one sludge removal during the period of February. There's summarization of plant operations, maintenance, collections, and then the lab activities. So those are included in the report regularly.
Any questions from the board?
No,
No? Okay. No? Was that Director Newquist? Did you have a question? Or
no, I did not.
okay, thank you. So, any comment from the public?
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
Go ahead and bring it back to the board. So there's no, we could go ahead and move on to the next item. Items for our next agenda.
So if I may summarize what we've discussed so far, Madam President Johnson announced a special meeting on March 25th. And the topics for that meeting would be the cost sharing agreement with the Water District as a result of the Joint Strategic Planning Committee, and then different forms of cooperation with Montecito Sanitary District and Water District and Joint Special Counsel, as well as consolidation, I believe, was another topic that will be on that agenda. There was mention of an ad hoc policies and procedures committee meeting to determine, I believe, setting a Zoom record retention policy was the context of why the ad hoc policies and procedures committee was going to meet again. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
Yes.
the next regular meeting of the board will be April 8th, and 3 items already added to the agenda from today's meeting would be resolutions that would basically make us unsubject to the Uniform Public Construction Accounting Act, and a new purchasing resolution regarding supplies purchasing and a public works projects. And I think that's all I have so far. Does anyone have other things they want to add to the next agenda?
I think a report from the labor negotiators should be on that agenda, and that may or that probably will include Bob Murray and Associates.
Thank you, Director Newquist.
I had one. Just a short
Director.
discussion. Okay, thank you. A short discussion on the March 25th meeting about directors participating in the sewer line rebate program.
And also too, we will, well, actually the committees at that time, whoever, we have to kind of formulate that, but we will have that joint strategic planning on April 2nd. Is that right, Woody? With the water district. So we'll be reporting back from our special meeting on the 25th. We'll be giving recommendations back to the meeting on the 2nd, I believe on the April.
I believe that's the date.
Isn't
April
it
2nd.
April 2nd? Is it
So,
the
yeah.
joint is April's, 6th, and then our board meeting we could report that back on the 8th.
Right.
Okay. Did that make sense, Betsy?
Yes, so
25th,
is.
yeah.
The 25th, we're going to meet about topics related to recycled water and, cooperation with the water
Consolidation.
district. And we're going to report back on April 8th after another joint strategic meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I just think that, I know it's 5 o'clock. Thank you for your patience. My computer, I think I'm gonna have to get some special sound, Betsy, to coordinate with you. But thank you all for everyone being here as long as 5 o'clock, and we'll see you at the next meeting on the 25th.
So we are adjourned.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Someone like to
would.
second it? Okay. Betsy, did you catch that?
I think Newquist
Okay.
and Barrett and Eversol all moved and seconded to adjourn. So
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
And I'll say aye.
Amen.
Thank you. Have a
All
good week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Be careful.
Goodbye.